Call to order the Beaumont City Council regular session at 6:47 p.m. Call to order, please.
Councilmember Santos?
Yes. Here.
Councilmember White?
Here.
Councilmember Lara?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Here.
Mayor Carroll?
Here. Do I have any action on excused absences or anything, conflict of interest, anything like that?
Mayor, I'll recuse myself from number 14.
Okay, thank you.
And I believe I have to recuse myself from number 20.
Okay. And I have to recuse myself from 2019. All right. Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Santos.
I pledge to the flag
Of the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Announcements, recognitions, proclamations. Tonight, we have recognition and some announcements. The first recognition that we have is our Transportation Now trophy. Do you want to do the whole discussion, or do you want me to segue you into this? Okay. Transportation Now is our community group that is a combination of grassroots staff and public officials, where it's our job to promote awareness and to smooth out all the aspects of public transportation so that we can reduce traffic for our neighborhoods, get people to jobs and schools, and to improve public transportation wherever possible. We meet once a month, and the group has a once-a-year annual meeting in Riverside, where all of the transportation groups, which is a chartered group by Riverside Transit Agency, and they meet once a year, and in that collaboration, they all talk about what they've achieved over the last year and what their goals are for the next year. And one of the team building exercises that they do every year is to have a competition on the centerpiece for the tables. It's very well attended. It's a very nice collaboration of goals and direction where knowledge is shared between the groups. It's a big win. It's the T-Now's version of the Super Bowl if you get the centerpiece. And Beaumont has won the centerpiece 3 out of 4 years now, and we don't plan on ever giving it away. And we won it last year, so we knew it would be very hard to keep it this year. And I was given the job to be the head of the centerpiece subcommittee for the T-Now group. And Councilmember Welch from Banning was on the team, and he suggested that we involve the students. And that, I thought, was a terrific idea, since student ridership is such an important part of public transportation, and because if you teach them to use the bus and where they can go on a quarter and how they can get around, then it's limitless. They can go to LA, they can go to Disneyland, they can go any place they want on pretty economical and safe means. So with that, we went and we met with, and I want to mention that Councilmember Martinez was a great help. He connected us to the right people at the Beaumont Unified School District. We went over and we met with the physics teacher, who I will mention his name. We have a certificate for him, George Parachi. And he was all excited to get the students involved. And he treated it like a real career project for the students. They had to come up with ideas. They had to meet with the committee. They had to meet with the T Now group. They had to find out what public transportation means in the Pass area. They had to take our ideas and begin on design. Then they had to talk to us about their prototype. And then they came for their proof of concept, and we were like the clients. So the teacher did great leadership for the students, who did a great job. And it ended up to be a wrapper of an exercise where they learned their own team building. They learned how to meet a deadline. They learned steps of the way on how they were going to interface with the client at some point in the future in their careers. And we won the trophy. What more can I say? I mean, we were pretty happy about that. So tonight we have 3 students here. We did have their leader, their teacher, physics teacher, George Parachi, but he did have to leave because we had gotten a little bit late tonight. And so with that, your name is here, so that's what you do. Okay. So tonight I would like to bring them up to the podium and give them their certificates of recognition. I want to point out that the centerpiece is at the back table, as well as the trophy, the coveted T Now Super Bowl trophy. So by all means, do not leave without it. They looked at what the transportation ideas were for the pass, what it is you go by, who we are as the pass. They've got maps of the routes on the side of the centerpiece. They have the features on the top of what our pass looks like. And all in all, they've done a great job. So let me read the names here from and then I'm going to come down and hand them to you. We have George Parachi, who is the physics teacher, who did a wonderful job. We have Giovanni Montes, who is one of the students that was on the team. And by the way, this team, they just did the whole thing. They helped get it there. They set it up. They made sure it kept running. We have Jonathan Kleffel. And we have Drew Danko. So with that, we are so proud of you. You did such a great job. You didn't let us down one step at all. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mayor, continue to do the great work. Can they get a picture with you, the parents?
Sure, absolutely. Where do you want it? Okay. How about here? And then,
That's fine.
Oh, you want to get it with that? Okay. We'll do that. Oh my God.
Good job.
Okay, item 2. Amr.
Mayor, while Mr. Jocker's walking up, I guess I missed the adjustments to the agenda. Did you ask for adjustments to the agenda?
Oh, I probably didn't say the word adjustments.
I just
You
wanted
wanna
to,
make any
I'd like to
adjustments?
ask that we move item 16 up to be the first action item, public hearing request.
Okay. Item 15.
16 will go
16.
in place of
Okay.
number 9.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Honorable Mayor, Council Member, just want to take the opportunity to introduce Public Works staff. As you may recall, I got hired in the city a couple of years ago, and at that time, me and Lori were the only 2 staff members in Public Works. So thanks to your support and city managers, we've grown into about a dozen of us now. So just want to take that. I mean, and we've been hiring for the last 2 years. Some of them are very new staff and some have been here for a while. So just want to take the time, introduce, put names with the faces and the duties that they do. So I'll start off with Aftab Hussain. He started with us. Come on, Noah. Aftab started with us about 2 years ago. His title is Public Works and Utilities Manager. His job duties are to manage field operations and some of the operations in the office. He helps coordinate between engineering staff and the utility staff, and also purchasing of large items, public work, and overseeing some of the public works projects. The next member is Lori Miller. Lori Miller she's been with the city for 11 years. Now she's doing administrative analyst duties for the Public Works Department. Her main duty is to watch the money, make sure the budget and all the invoices are paid. She will be helping us with the next year's budget. She oversees the contracts that are approved, make sure that those contracts the POs get issued. Then later on, when the invoices come in, that they're properly tracked and properly marked and paid. The next member, and then we have engineering. This is administration portion of the Public Works. We also have engineering function. Engineering function, there are four staff members. First one is Chris Sorensen. Chris Sorensen, he's one of our engineers. He graduated, I believe, last year from Cal State Long Beach in civil engineering. He started with us last year, and his duties are to oversee public works projects and some of the land development. He's also in charge of some of the issues that are going on at the treatment plant. The next engineer is Gul Nawaz, Mr. Nawaz. Mr. Nawaz also started with about the same time. He went to Cal Poly Pomona as well in civil engineering. And his duties include mainly overseeing the land development and projects, small projects that we're doing and moving on to the larger projects. Susan Foxworth is an engineering technician. And she's been with us about almost a year now, since June. And her duties include issuing of permits for building, for the building activity that's going on. So she issues permits for public works and for building division. So interacts with a lot of the public and all of the things that go on with the construction inspections and permits. The next member is Kevin Norville. He's public works inspector. Kevin has been with the city for the last 6 years. He's one of our first steel we made from Community Services Department, and we kept going. He's with us for 2 years as public works inspector. He's performing inspections and supplements inspection services that are provided by the contract services. The next group is the street group. As you recall, the last budget year we added positions for the street department. The first one we hired was the supervisor, Martin Gutierrez. Martin come to us with 26 years of public service in different cities, 15 years as a supervisor in lead capacity. We hired him first so then he can pick his team. So he came in and started working on getting the team going. We did acquire some vehicles, as you saw a few meetings ago. So we have some trucks now that they're using to go out there and do the job. The main functions are we're repairing the potholes, crack sealing, doing tip and fall sidewalk repairs, curb and gutter, storm drain system cleanup, pavement marking, street signs, removal of trash from the public right of way. So we're going on to the typical functions of a street department, and some of them were contracted out, as you may recall, and we're taking them over, and we are saving now quite a bit of money by not having to contract out for those services. The next staff member is Hector Gonzalez. Hector, again, has been with the city for 10 years, so he was well trained by Community Services when we took him into our street department. He's helping us as a maintenance worker. One, Hugo Castro, is also with the city for 16 years, with us since earlier this year. And he's also a street maintenance worker. Then we have Jose Nunez. Jose Nunez has 14 years of experience. He's been with the city of Beaumont for 14 years. So we have quite a bit of staff that has experience. That has helped us a lot. When these guys go out there, we don't have to tell them what street and what the issues are. They know. In fact, they bring all the issues and the solutions to us. Jose Castillo, the last. Jose has started. He's also street maintenance worker. He started with us a few months ago. He has over 3 years experience in construction. He's helping us with sidewalk repairs, construction repairs. We do have additional staff that we will be hiring for wastewater. We're in process of going out and getting staff members for that. Those would help us with the cleaning of the sewer lines and some maintenance at the treatment plant. So just want to take the opportunity to thank council and city manager for giving us the help that we needed to put the department back together. Thank you. They all wanted to make a 5-minute speech.
Thank you. Welcome.
Mayor, if I can say a couple things, I'll say Martine, when he first got here, he was a one-man show, and he and Kevin were actually out pouring concrete on trip and falls. So every time I saw Martine, he looked more and more exhausted. So he actually is perking up a little bit now. And then with Mr. Castillo, I'm not sure if you can see his uniform, but we definitely need to work on a dress code there. You know what I mean? So orange and blue is what I'm thinking.
Blue and gold.
Strategy.
I like the hat the best, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Okay, our third item is presentation by WRCOG. And with that, we'll listen to Rick Bishop.
Thank you, Mayor, and members of the council and staff and members of the audience. I'm Rick Bishop. I'm the executive director of WRCOG, also known as the Western Riverside Council of Governments. And it's a real pleasure to be here. In fact, it's been a long time since I've been here to give a presentation. So I actually want to thank all of you personally to get us to the point where we can talk about some programs that we think are of benefit to the city of Beaumont. And we're thrilled to have the city back in our fold because your voice in the region is very important. So I'm here to talk about something that's called community choice aggregation. And before I start, I actually wanted to introduce a few folks that are here who may be available to answer questions. One, Barbara Spoonhour is our Director of CCA Development. We also have two of our consultants, Gary Saliba with EES Consulting and Jeff Fuller with the Energy Authority. They're consultants that we've chosen so that when we get to the point of official launch of a CCA, they'll be guiding us. Also, Tyler Masters is here. He's one of WRCOG's program managers. So I don't know to what extent you are familiar with community choice aggregation, but just kind of want to run you through that. Community choice aggregation is something that was set in state statute several years ago, and basically it allows for local governments, a city by itself or a collection of cities, to provide electricity to customers within the area that is served by the utility. So in our case, our energy is provided by Southern California Edison. What a CCA or a community choice aggregation allows is for local jurisdictions to take on that role. And so you can see the typical energy chain is that the CCA would be buying the electricity. The utility, in our case, Southern California Edison, would still be the entity that would be delivering the energy through its transmissions lines, and then the customer, both your residents and your businesses, are the beneficiary of the ability to choose between either Southern California or the new CCA. So why are jurisdictions participating in CCAs? Well, quite frankly, it's because they see it as an opportunity to provide for local control over their energy supply. And there's also a proven track record of existing CCAs throughout the state that have been able to achieve some cost savings. And so depending on how you look at it, those two combinations are pretty enticing to local elected officials and to us as well. I'll kind of run through the numbers a little bit. This is not a new concept. CCAs have been around in California and, in fact, throughout the nation for a number of years. In fact, if you take a look at this graphic, it'll show you that within the state of California, there are already 9 CCAs that are operational. The ones that you see in red are CCAs that are operating within Southern California, within the territory of Southern California Edison. Interestingly, there are 14 areas, local jurisdictions or collections of jurisdictions throughout the state that are exploring CCA development, including us, Western Riverside County, and then there are about 10 CCAs that have actually been approved and are scheduled to launch in this year. If you add up the number of jurisdictions within Edison's territory that are in the process of examining becoming a CCA, I think it makes up about 60% to 2/3 of their total energy supply. So this isn't something that we're spearheading, it's something that we're following along, and we sort of have the good fortune of taking a look at how others have moved through the process and their successes and challenges. So the current process for how Edison, or for how energy gets to you, this is how Edison delivers energy to you now. Edison is the energy purchaser. They're also the delivery mechanism, and then the customer receives the energy. The only thing that changes with the CCA is now you've got a different choice. The customer, the consumers, the residents, and the businesses now have a choice whether they want to have their energy purchased by the CCA through an organization that is run by local elected officials, or continue to have it purchased by Edison. The delivery continues to go through Edison. In fact, the billing continues to be provided from Edison. There's very, very few changes that would be apparent to the consumers. So the question that we were asked when we first became intrigued by the idea of a CCA is, well, do they really save money? And I'm asked that question, we're asked that question continually, and I'll be upfront with you in telling you that there's no guarantees, that a CCA can save money. There's also no guarantees that tomorrow will actually exist as well. But we've been very prudent in taking a look at what other CCAs have experienced throughout the state, and that has served to us to be able to develop what we think is a very conservative benchmark in our own feasibility study that was prepared over the course of a year or so. So you can see here, I'm not going to get into a lot of details, but we looked at existing CCAs up and down the state, and we found that they were able to deliver on the promises and the performance that they were looking at as well. So we taking a deeper dive. We've kind of taken a look at what CCAs, what kinds of savings might be in store for local residents in Western Riverside County. And you can see there's a couple scenarios there. One is at a 2% savings on the utility bill, and then one is at a 4% savings. And what you see here on this slide is we have 147,000 residential units that we're using as an example. That's the equivalent of about 5 of our average size cities. And really what we're looking for, Mayor and members of the council, is that our initial launch of a CCA would include 4 or 5 jurisdictions. Jurisdictions can join at any time, but we're looking to get some momentum with a few jurisdictions kind of pulling the trigger at the same time. Then we can form the entity and start moving ahead. So this is a sample estimate of what 2% and 4% savings would bring to the customers in the subregion. And you can see it's not insignificant. So a resident might say, 2% savings or a 4% savings isn't much. Well, maybe on a monthly basis it's not, but if you aggregate it over the course of a year and then multiply it times tens of thousands of units, you are seeing significant savings to the residents and businesses in the subregion. And that's important, particularly when it comes to business attraction. Big businesses that are large users of electricity are looking for every savings they can get, and we think it's important for local businesses, big and small, to have the opportunity to choose where they might be able to get their savings from. So you can kind of see at the top, 2% savings for residential units. Cumulatively at the bottom, is it worth the effort? You're seeing significant savings through the subregion. This is discretionary money that local residents and businesses can use for other things. I mentioned before that for the consumer, the process would be relatively transparent and you wouldn't even really know it. The only thing that would happen with the billing would still be provided by Southern California Edison, and really the only noticeable change is there would be some kind of a line item on the bill when it gets to the point of the generation, the energy purchase, that it would be the purchases coming from what our CCA is called, which is Western Community Energy. So it's a very simple process for the consumer. What I'd like to do now, Mayor, with your permission, is to introduce Barbara Spoonhour. She's our Director of CC Development, and she'd take you through some of the deeper analysis we've done just on the financials for such an entity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. I get the fun part.
we'll talk about the economics, and I have my consultants here to answer any deeper questions that you might have. Just to go back, we talk about 2% savings, and it includes what's called a PCIA or an exit fee charge. The reason that CCAs are successful in giving a savings to residents is that the utilities were forced to enter into long-term, high-priced contracts way back with the energy crisis. In today's markets, those contracts can be purchased at a much lower rate. You can do smaller time frames, so there's a lot more savings that's available. However, since Edison does have those existing contracts, they can't be left unpaid. So that's what the exit fee is. And what we show is that once we purchase energy at a cheaper rate, make up for the difference that Edison has paid in those contracts, we still ultimately end up with a savings. So when we look at our performers, and our performers are looking at, again, 5 to 6 jurisdictions, about 2.2 gigawatt hours. We show our first partial year of 2018. That's a late launch, late summer of 2018. That once we purchase the energy, move out our expenses, our operating reserves, which is projected at a 7% reserve rate. There's left about 8.6 in a full year, about $18 million. And that's what the CCA board is able to either put back into additional savings to the customer or implement energy efficiency programs for its residents. So what the CCA does, it allows flexibility on the local level. So Edison has great programs, however, they're stretched through 6 counties. The money doesn't go far. There's money available to make up and really enhance those programs. Our expenses, we ran our expenses based off of our consulting costs, that these are actual costs that we're going to incur, that run through our power supply, our data management fees to Edison, as well as the state fees to Cal ISO. And then last but not least, how we plan on phasing in our 5 to 6 jurisdictions. The idea is that we would run all residential, commercial, and industrial first, and then bring over the NEM customers or net metering customers, rooftop solar customers second, along with CARE and FARA customers, so low income third, to bring them in line. Again, when we talk about the PCIA or exit fees, we did take those in account into our studies so that we can cover the cost that Edison's departing load and ensure that there's potential savings. Bottom line, what we did in our feasibility study is we ran a scenario. The state does have portfolio RPS, renewable portfolio standards that utilities have to meet. The CCA has to meet those as well. They need to have a 33% energy mix by 2020. They need to have a 50% by 2030. And there's talk in legislation that's been introduced over the last year or so that's really trying to push utilities and CCAs into 100% renewable into their portfolio. So when we ran our scenarios, we did run those against the RPS with what Edison and all of the other utilities need to acquire. And we still show a savings for the 33% and the 50%. Actually, for people who would like to pay for a 100% renewable mix, and there are people who feel very green and are really interested and okay with paying a little bit extra to actually say that they are contributing to a 100% renewable mix. How does it work? Must all residents and businesses participate? Per state law, this is, and it's going to seem a little strange, this is an opt-out program, and the reason it was designed that way was to give CCAs an opportunity to thrive. In an opt-out program, you have little opt-out. In an opt-in program, you only get about 17% of people who actually opt into something. So the state designed it as an opt-out. So if the city decides to join, it's joining on behalf of all of its residents and businesses. Those residents and businesses do have the opportunity to opt out and go back to and stay with Edison if they so desire. They can do that at the beginning. They can do that in the middle. They can do that any time along the way. They have the ability to stay with Edison if that is what they want. We do have to notify customers as the program gets ready to launch, 60, 90 days prior to launch. We do have to notify all customers that this is coming. They have the opportunity to opt out. We will have the ability where consumers can go online, easily opt out on a website, call in, and again, they have a choice. The one thing is that Edison will require them to stay with them for a minimum of a year. After that year, if that customer decides it wants to come back to Western Community Energy, it has that ability as well. So will you be able to compare what the rates are going to be against Edison's? Yes. Each year we need to get with Edison, find out what their rates are for the year. Again, the CCA rates are set at the board level, the local level. So we are able to set our rates, compare them to Edison's, notify customers, here's what the rates are coming out as. And again, this gives customers another opportunity. If they so desire, they want to change and go back to Edison, they can. Or they may see it and they want to come back, they want to come to Western Community Energy. Again, just to talk about additional benefits of the program, I talked before, Edison has some really good programs. Unfortunately, it doesn't go very far when you're looking at 6 counties. And sometimes we feel in our region, we sort of get the shaft. So this is a way to actually enhance those programs. So there can be programs that the board can determine where they can subsidize or enhance low-income programs rates. They can also do more on the mobile home or manufactured home program that Edison has. Direct install programs Edison has where they actually have contractors that go out and do free work on qualified businesses. That can be enhanced, and we can offer more of that to businesses and municipalities. In terms of new energy programs, one of the things that Sonoma County is working on is actually purchasing electric vehicle chargers for the homes. They retain the asset, so the charger, but they're giving them to the homes so that they can promote the purchase of EVs. So those are just some of the types of programs that you could do. Are there risks? We've been asked the question, it just sounds too good to be true. What's up? There are risks. You always have legislation and regulatory risks. You have legislation that can come out that wants to do away with CCAs. So you have the risks of higher energy costs. You also have the risk of Edison decreasing its generation charges. So there are always risks, but there are ways to minimize them. Really being actively involved at the California Utilities Commission, Energy Commission, as well as our local representatives to ensure that they understand what a CCA is, the benefits that we're providing to the communities, can help ward off those regulatory and legislative changes. Due diligence in contract management, the Energy Authority will manage our portfolio. They are owned by 8 municipal utilities. They are a nonprofit. They have over 50 years of experience in purchasing energy. So we have the best to watch out for our portfolio and to help us through this process. And finally, when we talk about rates and can rates go above, they can. You need a rate stabilization fund so that you could weather times when energy costs are higher and then readjust. Our startup fees run between $3 to $7 million. There's a range because we've based it off of what our 5 or 6 jurisdictions would cost versus the eligible 13 jurisdictions and potentially some of San Bernardino County cities joining us. So as more cities join, the implementation costs rise a little bit. At the moment, WRCOG's covering these costs, but they will be recouped through the revenues as we develop the rates for the residents. So how do cities join? Very simply, city needs to take council action to join the JPA. They would also hold a public hearing to adopt the CCA ordinance. There are very limited staff impacts. What we're asking is the staff provides information at their city counters, and you direct any questions back to us. That's what we're here for. So what happens next? Again, we're working with our jurisdictions, giving presentations. We hope to have 5 to 6 jurisdictions in the next couple months and actually be able to launch sort of in the late September, October timeframe. So what WRCOG has worked on over the past years, we've developed the template. So we have JPA template, we have bylaw template, we have the ordinance model, everything ready to go if a city is interested, and can also help with the staff report that comes back to council. Again, just our preliminary timeline. We're in the process of determining who's in, who's out. We would love for the city of Beaumont to participate. And we're in the process of forming the JPA. And again, everything rolls right and the cards shake out. We might be able to start serving load August, September, October of 2018. And that concludes my presentation, Ms. Mayor, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Barbara. Council questions? Go, Fred.
I don't need to always go first.
I can go.
Go ahead.
All right.
What, I got a question. What's our limit? What's our, John, what's our scope on questions? Is technically, since it's agendized, we can talk? Okay, that's fine. So I got 1,000 of them too, so.
Councilmember.
You said that once the city opts in, customers can opt out. Is there a cost to that, a charge?
There is no charge for opting out.
Okay. Since the power comes from Edison through the CCA, can Edison, if there's a brownout, just choose the CCA towns or cities as opposed to their customers?
No. So Edison the CCA is still utilizing Edison's distribution system. Residents and businesses are still paying the distribution piece. So regardless if you're an Edison customer or a CCA customer, you're both paying the same transmission line distribution piece. So no. We've been in contact with the city of Lancaster, and they've actually noted that they've gotten better service now that they're a CCA from Edison. So there hasn't been a change for them. They're actually happier with the services that they're being provided.
Did you say the CCA is a nonprofit? Did I hear that, or did I misunderstand that?
The CCA, it's a joint powers authority,
Joint.
so it's local government.
Okay. So if Edison has increases to their power, are those an automatic pass-through through the CCA?
If Edison is purchasing the power on behalf of the customer and they have an increase, they need to go to the CPUC to have their rates adjusted, and that SCE customer who is Edison generation and distribution would have an increase if that's what Edison so desired.
Right, but so there's an increase in Edison, that increase has to get passed on to the CCA, which in turn gets passed on to the customer, is that correct?
If it's on the transmission side, yes.
Okay.
So there's a distinct difference between the purchasing of energy or the generation side and the transmission side, distribution side of Edison.
Okay. And so on the infrastructure, because I know that there's some infrastructure issues in certain areas because it hasn't been updated in a long time. Is that done by the CCA or is that still done by Edison?
That's still through Edison because that's the distribution side. That's their assets.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Councilmember White?
I could hear his thousands first.
Oh, no. I don't even, go ahead, they're all scattered.
So my first question is, when this does become an action item on our agenda, will you come back and address our questions? And the reason I ask you that, Mr. Bishop shaking his head, so I said say yes. I've had the opportunity of seeing this presentation as a member of the WRCOG Executive Board. I've also had the ability to sit down with at least 3 of the people who are here today and ask my direct questions. And the questions that I would have to ask will show my bias. And at this point, I'd rather just wait and have you come back, and then I can address those questions. However, I do have some that are non-biased questions. We can join later, correct? If we're
Correct.
not one of your startups and we watch and take our time and watch how the other cities benefit, then we can join at that point, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. This is a new government, a new regional government authority, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Single-purposed.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask my biased questions. This is an individual gets to make the choice. The city makes a choice, and then the individuals are given an opportunity to opt in or out, or to opt out. They're automatically in if they don't opt out, correct?
That is correct.
And if they opt out, then they'll be paying what Southern California Edison is charging.
Correct. For generation and distribution, yes.
Will so the city will pay the startup cost. Being a member of the CCA will pay the startup cost and any exit fee later if the city decides to opt out. Correct?
The startup costs are being covered by WRCOG.
But I mean,
and will be recouped through the rate structure.
Right.
Now, if the city, let's say we were a few years in and the city wanted to opt out, we would do everything that we could to make sure that there was limited liabilities to the city for the energy that has been purchased on behalf of its residents.
where I'm really going at is if I'm one of the residents who get the option to opt out and I decide to opt out, will it some way or another, will I be absorbing the startup costs not through my rates, correct?
Correct. You would not be absorbing any rates.
Okay. And are there state regulated fees on the CCA? In other words, does the state charge a fee for the CCA to operate?
No. There are fees associated with operating in Cal ISO, so operating within the grid, but that is not the state. And
Okay.
the CEC does not charge fees.
Okay, I think where I'm going with that is, the electric vehicles were the direction the state wanted everyone to go. And we go and buy all the electric vehicles, and now we find out that our gas tax is not enough to cover because everyone's saving, not using gas. So then they start charging electric vehicles, or either they have started or planning to start to charge them to make up for what they saved by going to electric vehicles. And so I'm just curious as to whether or not that is, if there's another agency, another government that can come in and say, okay, the CCA has to pay more than they're paying now.
No, there is not, because then they would have to go to each of the utilities and charge them as well.
Okay. And so explain to me, if I'm a ratepayer and I'm looking at the options, and if I stay with Southern California Edison, I'm not absorbing the cost and the fees and the expenses from being part of the CCA. And the operating expense was 44 million and 99 million and 100 million. So is the operating expense something that I'm avoiding as staying with Southern California Edison?
No, because you're paying Edison's operating expenses.
Okay, so those operating expenses are not the CCA operating expenses.
These operating expenses are the CCA's. What we do not show is Edison's operating expenses, because I do not know Edison's operating expenses.
I guess that's what I'm asking. So these are the pro forma summary.
Yes, the pro formas are the CCA's, yes.
Okay. So those are operating expenses in addition to whatever operating expenses the SEC or Southern California Edison has to provide the product to us. They have operating expenses.
They have operating expenses that are in their transmission and distribution
Okay.
fees. So they have what's called delivery charges. Within those delivery charges, those are Edison's fees to deliver the power to the home.
Okay.
So the only piece, at the bottom where it normally says Edison's generation charges, because Edison would be purchasing energy, is currently purchasing energy, and then they are distributing the energy to the consumer. So they are charging for their generation piece, and they are charging for their distribution piece, which makes up the whole bill.
Okay.
In a CCA, the CCA is purchasing the generation. Edison is still charging for its distribution because it's still delivering, and you add those two together to come up with the final bill to the customer.
Okay. And last question, if I don't opt out, if I stay in, and then 2 years from now I realize I made a mistake, can I opt out at that point?
Yes, you can.
And is there an individual exit fee for me?
No.
And the other way, if I opt out, 2 years later, can I get back in?
Yes, you can.
And is there a fee to do that?
No.
Okay. So I'm done, but I do want to make I'd like to see this brought back as an action item, so we can get feedback from the public on the next direction.
And we're happy to come back. And I do have some FAQs in the back of the room that are questions for local government as well as questions for from the local community.
Okay.
And on the exit fee or the PCIA as well.
Oh, well, I'm sorry, one last, what other jurisdictions at this point are on board?
So we are in the process of giving our presentations. City of Wildemar is to take action on February 14th. City of Murrieta is scheduled for February 20th. And Lake Elsinore is having us provide a presentation on February 27th. They are still up in the air as whether it's going to be an action or just an informational piece.
Okay.
And then we've provided 2 weeks ago presentations to the City of Norco.
Thank you. I would like to see an action item.
Yeah, I agree.
Doug?
Yeah. Well, I need to do more research, I think, and I don't know if this is the time to let go on all the questions yet until I do a little bit of research. But in general, just kind of clarifying, I apologize if you answered this because it's just a little bit all at once for me. But tell me, so this JPA, this CCA, is buying the power from various sources?
Correct.
Including Southern California Edison, or not necessarily?
It can buy power from Edison because Edison does have some generation facilities. They have some hydro up in the Shasta area. They have some small natural gas facilities. So they do sell power, and it is the idea that we would be able to purchase power from them as well as out in the various markets, and the Energy Authority would do their due diligence to make sure that we are getting the best rates.
Okay, and then the board would decide on the rates based on however they decide. So it doesn't have to follow this tier system that Edison does. It could, but it doesn't have to.
It could, it doesn't have to.
Okay. And so if the city were one of the startups and the 3.7 million startup costs you said would be recouped back from revenues, so is the city putting up anything up front? I mean, you're getting WRCOG's going to put it up front, really.
Correct.
And are we going to owe anything as a city to them, or is it just going to come from the revenue?
It would come from the revenue.
Okay. And will, let's see, and then for liability, how is this liability working for the CCA in general? So we're buying everything up front and then selling it to the customer, or are we buying it as we go?
I'm actually going to call Jeff up here with the Energy Authority to talk about liabilities.
Okay.
Since they'll be managing our portfolio and he can cover the various scenarios.
Ms. Spoonhour, while he's walking up, you would be open to any other council members contacting you and having a one-on-one, face-to-face like I was able to do?
Certainly, I'm happy to meet with anyone and all who would like to have more information.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Fuller, Director of Client Services with the Energy Authority. So as far as the power procurement goes, at least initially, the expectation is that we would use our credit and contract arrangements with counterparties to go out and do the procurement on that. So, and then over time, we would, as revenues come in to the CCA, we would be paid out of those revenue funds to recoup the costs of power purchases. Typically, that period of time is, approximately 8 to 9 months, maybe 10 months over time before the CCA is actually up and current on its bills going forward. So the expectation is that over time, the CCA would pay those, but until the revenues were sufficient to cover those, we would be taking on that risk to do that. The other thing that we would require as part of this deal is that there would be a lockbox account set up, a deposit control agreement. So this would be a deposit account with a banking institution selected by the CCA. Funds would go into that account. It would actually be the CCA's deposit account, but then there would be someone that's administering those funds. We would submit invoices to that, and then we would be paid out of those funds. But then that would be our sole recourse in the event if something happened to the CCA and it were unable to pay its bills going forward, we would have just recourse to whatever funds were in that deposit account.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I think that's good for now.
I have a quick question on you. On the rate stabilization of fund creation, who will be, making a decision on that if there's, ups and downs on the rates? Is that will be available for the users?
Rate stabilization and development of rates would be set by the actual board. And in the JPA structure that we've developed, it's one city has one elected official sits on the board, and they also need to have an elected alternate on the board, and they would make the determinations of what to set the rate stabilization fund at. Staff, along with its consultants, would make recommendations to the board, but they would be the ultimate to approve those.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. Questions? Is there any, when you say you are trying to get groups of cities in aggregate to join, is there any, do they have to be geographically close? Can they be dispersed? Or do you have a method to that?
They do not need to be geographically
Okay.
aligned. They can be sparse.
Okay. And what happens if Edison drops their rate so that they don't lose customers to this JPA? How do you see that playing out if that happens in the future?
I have yet to see and/or hear of Edison reducing its rates. However,
But they've never had competition either.
However, if they so went that way, and again, their rates need approved by the California Public Utilities Commission. So if they were able to go to the commission and justify reducing their rates, again, we would pull into the rate stabilization fund to level those out. There's also the ability that if things are not going well, the board has the ultimate decision. It can dismantle the CCA, and then the customers all revert back to Edison.
Okay. And so with the opt-out methodology, if a city opts in and then a large percentage in the city decides that they don't like the different billing, they don't like the different method, they're not saving enough, whatever it is, there's a brownout and they think it's all your fault, whatever, and you get a large percentage of a city that then drops out fairly quickly after they're on board. Does that put the city in a financial risk because there's a lot of the citizens, more than you anticipated, that dropped out?
No, because it's not based on a city specific. It's built on an aggregate, so it's based on volume. So 5-6 jurisdictions really equates to about 2.2 gigawatts. So that's really what we're looking at is load, not necessarily.
So you've spread out the risk so
Correct.
diversely that it should not impact you. Okay, and what happens when someone moves?
When someone moves, the new customer coming in is automatically assigned to the CCA.
Okay.
The CCA does have to notify them that they have the ability to opt out, so that they still have that option. Same thing with new homes being built and coming online. Those are automatic Western Community. They would be, if the city joined Western Community Energy customers, we would then need to notify them and make sure that they are aware that they have the ability to opt out and stay with Edison if they so desire.
Do you see the JPA as you go forward, not only buying the electricity, so to speak, from Edison, but do you see it buying from private solar companies and other suppliers?
Very much so.
Okay.
It's
Is that
very-
part of the whole strategy to this?
Yes, the whole strategy is you're into the open markets, the open energy markets, so you're really purchasing from in-state as well as out-of-state. There are limits to what you can purchase out-of-state for what you, and requirements of what you need to purchase in-state. But there's the opportunities for short-term contracts, long-term contracts, mid-term contracts. There are some legislative guidelines under SB 350 that says that 60% of the portfolio is going to have some long-term contracts, which is 10 years or more. So there is, again, that's the Energy Authority and their 50 years of experience in managing and purchasing on behalf of their municipal utilities to guide us and ensure that we have a really good portfolio look.
Okay, one last question. Thank you. If Edison is doing the billing, and when I looked at the numbers, there's a fair jump in billing prices from one year to the next. I mean, what if they really increase your billing? Because the savings isn't really big per residential household. So that's pretty easy to eat away if a cost like billing by Edison went high. How are you going to control that?
So the billing piece is captured in the delivery charges, and that's an Edison charge. So that's going to, if Edison increases their delivery charges, it's going to increase on every single customer, regardless if it's a CCA.
I see. Okay. So they can't charge two different billing
No,
methods for you versus someone else?
no.
Okay.
One last question. And those that have the solars, panels that have the agreements with Edison, how does that play in?
So the solar customers, they're called NEMs, net metering customers. At the end of the year, when a customer puts solar on, Edison does a true up 12 months later, and they tell the customer, you either have a positive, so you're going to receive money, or you're negative, you're going to need to pay Edison, depending on how you generated and used during that 12-month period. For customers that are in a positive, Edison pays out at a wholesale rate. The idea in most CCAs pay out at a retail rate, so it's a little bit more, a cent more, but still it's a little bit more for those customers who actually end up their 12 months on a positive side.
Okay, so during the course of their existence in their house with their solar panel, this continues every year and so forth at the end when they true up.
Correct. So it's the same process. Edison has a year true up. The CCA would have a year true up.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation, and I think that we may end up bringing it forward to council again. At that point, it would be great to have you back.
Certainly. Happy to come back. Happy to have any individual meetings you'd like to have.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Item 4, Southern California Edison west of Devers upgrade project.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Eileen Flores. I'm the Government Relations Representative for City of Beaumont and also other cities in the area. As we prepare for activities associated with the West of Devers upgrade project, we wanted to provide you with an overview and also an update. Before we start, I'd like to provide a short refresher about Southern California Edison. Just an overview of our company. We have about 5 million customer accounts. That includes both residential and commercial. We serve about 15 million people. And our service territory is 50,000 square miles. And that is a combined total of 430 cities, counties, and communities. We generate about 36% of our electricity, and the remainder we purchase from independent independent power producers. We're the nation's leader in purchasing of renewable energy, and we have an extensive transmission and distribution system, and that includes over 103,000 miles of both distribution and transmission lines. Let's see. And then also, I just wanted to give you an overview of our top priorities. Safety is one of our priorities, and that's the safety of our employees, our customers, and the community. We are also, one of our priorities is service reliability, affordability, and clean power. And then the West of Devers, so we're here tonight to talk about the West of Devers project. We are committed to support of upgrading the region's power grid in support of the state's renewable energy goals. And West of Devers is a project that will update our transmission lines to provide additional capacity so that we can deliver renewable energy to the grid. Tonight with me, I have our project engineer, Scott Lacey, who will provide you with with an overview of the project.
Thank you.
Good evening. So as Ellen said, we've got the West of Devers transmission upgrade project. We are operating this project or running this project is to increase the capacity of the 220,000 volt transmission lines that run between our Devers substation, which is in the Palm Springs area, and runs through the San Mateo Canyon, through our El Casco substation, and out to Vista substation in Grand Terrace, and San Bernardino substation, which is ironically actually in Redlands. So it's about 48 corridor miles that run through the four cities, or through the various cities to the four substations. And this is kind of a map that shows that. We run through county territories, both unincorporated, Riverside and San Bernardino counties. Obviously, we run through Morongo territory as well. There's a certain amount of territory that runs through BLM land. We run through Banning, Beaumont, Calamasa, Redlands, Loma Linda, Colton, Grand Terrace. So we have a lot of interaction with a lot of different cities for this project. So the existing corridor, as I said, are currently at full capacity, and as the renewable portfolio standards increases from what we're running now at roughly 25% to 30% coming up soon, and 50% in 2030, we're looking at an additional amount of generation projects happening in the eastern Riverside County area, southern Imperial County, even over into the Arizona areas. And so as all that renewable power is generated out in the desert area, primarily solar, it comes through and gets to our Devers substation there in North Palm Springs, and right now kind of incurs a bottleneck trying to get from that area through the pass and through the Inland Empire out to the load centers out in San Gabriel Valley and farther west. So we need to increase the capacity of those lines, just like you would do if you're adding a lane to a freeway or you're adding diameter to a water pipe. You know, as development increases on the other end, you have to increase your throughput, and that's what this project will do. So we're essentially nearly tripling the amount of power that can be transferred, passed through this corridor with this project. And so we're increasing the reliability and really increasing the opportunity for the renewable power to come through into the corridor. We've got a few different visual simulations coming up. There's kind of 4 different views looking through different areas of the Beaumont Pass area. Right now, the way the transmission corridor is configured, we've got 3 support structures across the width of the corridor. We've got single circuit structures on the north and the south, and then a taller, skinnier double circuit structure that is through the center. What we're basically going to do is combine the outer 2 onto another double circuit structure, and as well as we're going to relocate and move the center structure a little bit to the south. Mainly the reason is because as we're increasing the size of the conductors or the wires as we go through the corridor, it increases the amount of weight that is up in the air, and the amount of diameter that is could incur wind loading. And so the structures right now average about 1,200 feet apart from each other linearly, and we have to reduce that average length to roughly 800-900 feet. So we'll respace them as we go up and down through the corridor when we do that, we have to relocate them to the north and south as well to fit. So when we're done, it'll look generally like this. Actually, those look a little, I never, as an engineer, I'm not really always very happy with the visual renditions that we get out of some of our environmental consultants. So this is pretty close to what they'll look like. They'll really look a lot more like the existing double circuit tower in the actual photos. The heights of those towers really won't change all that much from what's out there today in the center. It's just there'll be a few more of them throughout the length of the city. I don't recall the exact count, but I think there's roughly 25 sets down the line right now, and there'll be about 27 or 28 when we're done. So there'll be a few more of them in line, but we're also reducing from 3 across to 2 across. So the total number of structures that are physically in the corridor will be reduced from roughly 65 to about 50, but there will be a few more of them in sequence. Again, here's just another view looking from the Solera Clubhouse to the west, or excuse me, to the east with Mount San Jacinto in the background. And then again from within that community looking through what the corridor looks like now and what it'll look like in the future. When you go farther, a little bit farther east of Solera, again, this is what the corridor is now and what it'll look like in the future. So where we stand with our timeline, this has been a fully vetted, fully processed and licensed project through the Public Utilities Commission. So we did have to go through with full notifications and public outreach. We did that through 2011 to 2013. I think we made some presentations here probably in that time frame. And then we had some project open houses that we hosted actually in Solera and actually I want to say in the basketball court next door. During that time frame for public notice and input into both our proponents' environmental assessment that we submit as part of our application, and then the PUC themselves had subsequent open houses and workshops for the EIR process and the CEQA process they had to follow. So that went through from 2013 through 2016 as the Public Utilities Commission process. In August of 2016, the Commission issued their Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity. Because we have some amount of the project that goes across BLM land, of course, then we have a NEPA involvement. So we have a record of decision from the BLM. We've had involvement with Bureau of Indian Affairs as we go through Morongo, and we've been working very well and very closely with Morongo to have license agreements for the portion of the line that goes through their lands. So since we've received the decision from the Commission, we've been incorporating some final slight design modifications that were required from that decision. We've been processing all the subsequent permit applications for Army Corps, Fish and Wildlife for the state and federal, all the other miscellaneous agencies. We are participating special entities with both the Western Riverside and the Coachella Valley MSHCPs. All the additional permits and requirements that we have for mitigation measures in the environmental impact report have been processed in the last couple of years, and now we're ready to start construction. We've got a contractor hired as of approximately a month ago that will be our general contractor for the work. They're starting their submittal process to us and starting to do material procurement and expect to start on the construction of the major part of the corridor roughly the late second quarter of 2018. There will be some construction that begins primarily in the cities of Loma Linda and Redlands, starting actually this quarter. We're anticipating this is going to be a 4-year-long construction project. So you see that it'll continue through fourth quarter of 2021. The main reason for that is, as I said, there are 4 transmission lines that run through this corridor. In order to continue to provide reliable and safe service to our customers and to allow for safety of the linemen when they're working on these lines, we're only allowed to take one of those circuits out of service at any one time. And in a fairly tight corridor, you can't get a whole lot of work done with the other 3 lines in close proximity to you. Also, there's situations just on the east side of Banning and south of Loma Linda where the lines actually cross over each other in some point in time. So even if we were to take one circuit out of service, it doesn't give us the whole length of the corridor to work. So we have a very extensive set of sequences where we take different lines out at different times that gives that allow us to work in different chunks of, technical term there, of the line to process the construction and allow them to do that safely. So essentially what will happen is there will be waves of construction that come through up and down the corridor. Any one time at any one place, the construction will be fairly limited in nature. For example, we'll have a wave of small civil construction crews that will come out and start doing site preparation, maybe minor grading, delineate the work areas and install stormwater pollution prevention measures, straw wattles and fences to identify where the approved work locations will be. Days or weeks or months later, there'll be another crew that comes out for a couple of days for each site, drills the big concrete holes for the foundation, sets the concrete, and then they go away, and maybe days or weeks or months later, there'll be a crew that comes out and starts actually building the tower. Each one of those events may only be a couple of 3 days at any one time, and they'll be spaced over time. So cumulatively, any impact to a specific area will probably be on the order of a couple weeks or less, but it'll be spaced out over the entire 4-year period. And it may happen twice because we may only be able to build, say, for example, the southernmost tower first, because we can take the southernmost single circuit structures out, build that new double circuit tower, allows us to remove the existing double circuit towers and then build that one, which may be 2 years later from when we built that first one. It varies all the way up and down the line. There'll be some places that we have enough room that we can build both of them in one fell swoop. Sometimes we'll have to come back. But we do have obligations within our construction requirements to our contractor that we would do regardless, but they are part of the mitigation measures in the IR to maintain constant communications both with the cities, with the communities. We have outreach requirements to folks, like the Solara and the boards there that we plan to meet with. We'll have, and I was going to hand this back to Eileen, but here I am, just keep on rolling. We have requirements and we'll have information available both on our website, and we actually have worked with staff, from what I understand, that there'll be a link actually on your website that will come over to ours. The contractor will be required to have certain outreach as well. So we're trying to make sure everybody is as informed about it as possible. So I think the next two we do want to have, you do, right? Yeah, I'll do it. So, sorry, we didn't practice this, obviously. So we do have project-specific websites that you can use here, both ourselves and the commission. There is obviously a website they have used, not only for the IR process, but they have ongoing monitoring requirements as part of their oversight, and they have their own dedicated website. They have their own dedicated environmental monitoring team that watches to make sure that we're complying with all the requirements in the IR. And then, of course, that's their direct website and the email address for that. Other general information for Edison, obviously, again, safety is the biggest concern. If you see a wire down, there's nothing better to do than to call 911, get first responders out there. We have well-established procedures between us to get our troublemen and line crews out there as quickly as possible as well to work hand in hand with them. Customer service, if you have any other issues or wires down, numbers are there. And of course, we have a fairly extensive social media presence now that we're working on quite extensively. So that is the project in a nutshell, hopefully. If you have any questions, I'm happy to talk through any of those. And if not, we'll...
Good.
No, I have a question.
You have a question? Okay.
Can you go back to page 7 and 8?
Try my best.
Okay.
7, yeah.
Perfect. Okay. And go to 8.
Okay.
And then go back to 7. Like you were doing before. 8 looks great.
Okay. I'll just keep going back and forth.
No, you can stop on 7. Okay.
Yeah.
I need you to stop on 7. Okay, I live in this community. This is Stetson.
Yes.
We have 200 homes. We don't have an HOA. We don't have a board.
Right.
And if you look at the lines on the right, or in between the middle lines and the lines on the right, you can see 2 sections of, those are white trailers from the trailer park next door.
Those, from the RV storage yard across the street.
Correct.
Theodore.
Our house was one of the last ones built, and we lived there for 11 years. And we were told that our CFD Melrose money would go to develop a basketball court right there at the right-hand side. So now if you go to the next page, you see there's now an opening. The city came out and started to build the basketball court, and then stopped. And we were told that it was because Southern California Edison would not allow a park to be underneath the lines. And from the new drawing, it looks to me like there are no lines. And I can tell you there's 200 homeowners who are going to be demanding that we now have a park. So as I'm asking you, because you're the engineer as opposed to the customer relations person, will that be a problem for us to have a park that's not under the lines anymore?
Well, how can I put this? Most likely in the short term, I'd say generally no.
Right, I'm looking long term, once you're all done.
I'm thinking in the very long term. Okay. So you're right. In the very short term, while we're under construction, yeah, I don't think anybody would think that we'd want to put that there at the time.
Right.
So one thing we are doing, we are not intending to release any of the easement that we have across this corridor after we do this. Right. We designed the new system in this fashion, trying to look 10, 20, 30 years ahead, recognizing that as this requirement and the RPS goes to possibly to 100%, if it's, that some of this generation is going to continue out east, and the load is going to be continuing for the most part west of here. And there may be a need someday in the future for additional lines to come through this route. So we don't have anything on the books now. We don't, there's not a known project that's coming in 10 or 12 or 15. But as all of us know, there is continual push to have generation out east and the load can.
So let me ask.
So I'm sorry. So I was going with that is there would be a risk, certainly, if we were to allow you to put that in now, there would be a risk that someday in the future we may come back in and say, you got to rip it out.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. There's another park that's off of Oak View.
Mm-hmm.
Fallen Heroes Park. That has basketball courts directly under the lines. Directly under the lines.
Mayor, I don't believe
Are
we're
we
on
getting
topic
too
anymore.
off topic? Yeah.
Okay.
It's tangential.
All right.
Beavers, not parks.
Okay, well.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you let me go, there are situations like that that are inconsistent. I will agree with you on that, and that has been an issue that we've had over the years as far as when certain either primarily our corporate real estate folks and or our transmission engineering folks have either allowed or not allowed certain things at different times. And yeah, we do have some inconsistency there, and it's a hard question to answer because of that, unfortunately.
I'm just saying.
Because I feel
you're going to be answering that question to a couple hundred homeowners.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Not the first time I've had that question asked, I guess is the best way.
No other questions?
No.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for your work with the city on communication.
Oh, yeah.
That's much appreciated.
And just to close that one thing out for the parks, we do anticipate, going through the new development there, Starlight Cherry towards Highland Springs, that we will be allowing to at least have green belts and parkways, and it just gets a lot tougher when there are permanent vertical structures that are installed, trees, streetlights, basketball hoops, cause us a lot of problems.
Okay.
Low-level stuff, bushes, trees, sidewalks, we're all good. But we would just recommend that we wait until the construction's over on this.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Could one of you contact me, please? One of you contact me, please?
Yes, we'll set up a meeting with our land services.
Okay, because my next question was tennis courts, and I don't want to get into that. But tennis courts are only this high.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we need a break? Or are we, you guys okay?
So far.
Everybody okay?
So far.
All right. Thank you. I'd like to open public comment at 8:07. Do we have public comment?
Yes. I'm not sure if he's still here, but David Castaldo.
All right. I'm going to read this. Public comment period for items that are not on the agenda. Any one person may address the City Council on any matter not on this agenda. If you wish to speak, please fill out a public comment form provided at the back table and give it to the City Clerk. There is a 3-minute time limit on public comments. There will be no sharing or passing of time to another person. State law prohibits the Council from discussing or taking actions brought up by your comments.
I'm sorry. first speaker is David Castaldo. I don't see him here, though. Next is Len. I'm sorry, I don't want to mess up your last name.
Len?
Tavernetti.
Tavernetti.
I'll have to remember this technique for the 3-minute comments. I can use it at the HOA. Mayor, members of the council, I'm here representing the veterans, and we would like to thank you for the hospitality of having the Veterans Expo that was held last month. We had an excellent turnout of local community organizations that support the veterans, as well as the veterans. We honored a Beaumont resident, World War II veteran who's 93 years old, Colonel Leo Galloway. We also honored a veteran who has passed away. He was a Vietnam veteran. He returned a hero to the military, and to his family, he was simply a father. But his character, he passed on to his children, and his son is now the chief of police in Beaumont, and so we honored him, and we want to thank the Beaumont Police Department also for all the support they give the veterans. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
No other speaker.
I'll close public comment at 8:10. Consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are taken as one action item unless an item is pulled for further discussion. Do I have any requests for pulling a consent calendar item? No?
Mayor, I make a motion to approve items 5, 6, 7, and 8 off the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
Councilmember Santos?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor Carroll?
Yes. I had a request to move item 16 up in the agenda, so we will take item 16. Item 16 is the employment agreement for the transit director. This is a request to approve the employment agreement for the position of transit director. Motion or discussion?
Do we have a staff report first?
Yes,
Or do we have any public comments on this?
We do. So this is a contract that we had that's expiring here at the beginning of May. So it's really time to bring it forward and present this for City Council consideration. Elizabeth Gibbs is currently employed as our transit director. This contract would represent a 7.5% increase in her compensation package. It also migrates her from the existing contract she's been under, a 2-year contract that is not now one of our standard contracts, so it moves it over to an existing standard contract. So it takes her to the top of her range. And I'd like to talk a little bit about Elizabeth in this position that she, and the work that she does for the city. And in our community, we've been staffed at very thin levels, and so employees have taken on a lot of duties and responsibilities, over the years to try to tackle, some of the needs that are out there. So this position really isn't just a director. There's a lot of administration and management functions that go with it. Our transit operation isn't just transportation transit. It's also an internal service department. So it's providing vehicle maintenance and repair services to the entire city and has responsibility for oversight and maintenance of our entire fleet. In addition, there's grant work that this position does. There's budgeting. There's all the other additional financial operations that are out there. So really it works as more of a transportation director really than a transit operation. So there's a lot of things, facilities, capital that go into this particular position. We are in the process of also trying to benchmark this and study this as part of our class and comp study, which we hope to get completed very soon. We're in some of the final stages of that, and some rework on some of the sections with that as well. So this has to come to you a little bit in advance of that study because, again, we've got an expiring contract that we have to go ahead and do. So with that, when you do look at the draft benchmarking that's happened, this position is currently 22% below labor market median. So this action really doesn't even address really kind of the market value of this position. But again, it keeps it within range. It takes it to this existing position. It's something we need to contemplate as we look at our class and comp study moving forward. So with that, recommendation to council is to please consider this contract and to authorize it.
Thank you for your staff report. Discussion by council?
First, I want to start by saying I asked this item to be moved up to the front. Recently in the water workshop, we heard that some people feel that the more important issues are being moved to the back. And this was an important issue, not because of the issue itself, but let me start by saying Elizabeth stepped in probably the hardest time our city's been in ever as the interim city manager. She came in, she did a great job. She didn't ask for a contract increase at that time. And then as we are transitioning to an interim, that's, I believe, when this 2-year contract was set up in May. I think the timing's about the time that she stepped down and agreed to move back to transit. And I was very frustrated to see Mrs. Uramovic or Ms. Uramovic make an accusation that our contract would be paying her as the second highest transit director in the state. I'm assuming state, maybe she meant country, I don't know, but she said the second highest, we would make her the second highest transit director. And I knew that was not anywhere close to the truth. And I hope to have this up front so that we could ask Ms. Uramovic to provide her evidence of that claim or to take the claim back. And I wanted to do this early on so that if people do start to tune out as some of the stuff gets really boring, even though some of the stuff has already been fairly boring, that they understand that we are what's the word I'm looking for? We are asking for an increase for someone who's deserving of this increase and to be used as a tool, especially considering what she brought the city through, to use her as a tool to slam us and indicate that we're spending money irresponsibly. I thought it was important, and I'm very disappointed that Ms. Uramovic didn't stick around for this issue. So I would like to support the idea of approving this employment contract. Thank you.
And Councilman, if I could, I did a little bit of research to try to figure out where that might have been coming from. And if you go back and look at publicpay.ca.gov, the last updated in 2016, there are 2 transit director positions listed in the entire state of California on the website.
Okay, so she's also the lowest paid transit.
Exactly. So Torrance, California transit director, $230,000, $230,600 a year. Beaumont, California, $113,437.
So she was already the second highest paid.
She was already the second highest paid.
Or the lowest.
Yeah. And then you also provided us with some a labor market salary survey showing another 5 cities, Culver City, Fresno, Commerce, Norwalk, Montebello, with paying their transit directors higher, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And we benchmarked against transportation directors because, as I've alluded to, transit director positions, particularly in municipal governments, are very hard to find. That position isn't really there. So it really, and the job title is really much more consistent with the transportation director position. So, we're benchmarking as best we can across this, the state really in this case. So, when you look at transit or transportation, a lot of it is school district oriented. A lot of it is county oriented, where you're talking about countywide and regional transportation systems or school transportation systems. So not quite apples to apples.
Okay, so thank you. I now understand why Ms. Uramovic decided to leave.
Thank you for bringing that up. I didn't mean to cut short on the staff report, but I knew there would probably be discussion, so I sort of jumped right in there. Any other comments from or concerns from council?
I mean, I'd just like to state that I echo Councilmember White's comments regarding the job and the integrity that Elizabeth showed during her time stepping up to do that, and I will always remember that and appreciate that.
I move to approve the employment agreement for the position of transit director.
I'll second that.
Councilmember Santos,
Yes.
Councilmember White,
Yes.
Councilmember Lara,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez,
Yes.
Mayor Carroll.
Yes.
Thank you.
Item 9. Oak Valley Street Improvement Project, striping safety concern update.
Honorable Mayor, Council Member, as you may recall, the last council meeting, residents spoke regarding the striping and the construction activity that took place on Oak Valley. Council requested that the staff agendize this item and bring an update to the City Council, so we've done that. The staff report talks about the issue. The issue is that we used to have one lane on Oak Valley going eastbound and one lane going westbound. When we, as part of the settlement agreement with the WRCOG, we were required to finish off that segment of the roadway into 2 lanes in each direction. To do that, we had to add more pavement, add curb and gutter on certain areas, and also stripe that into 2 lanes. When we did that, there used to be a section of the roadway that was used by some of the residents there for parking and slowing down and accessing their driveways. And that area became a lane. In this case, the lane is eastbound number 2 lane. So the concern the resident had was that first they lost the ability to park. The other thing was there's times the traffic is moving very fast and they're unable to either get out of the driveway, or as they're slowing down to get into the driveway, they felt that it was unsafe. There was also issues they brought up with the stop sign. We've looked at the striping. We've looked at the work that was done. The police department has looked at the accident history on the intersection. We don't feel there is enough accidents, or we didn't find any accidents at the intersection at all. But as far as the striping goes, we met with the resident today. The assistant city manager, me and my staff, we met with the resident today, and we talked about other options. And what we did was we agreed, and this staff report talks about that we'll present to City Council an option to look at putting in sidewalk in that area. So the reason for that is there is no sidewalk from I believe it's Orange Avenue to Pennsylvania. But there is parking available in Pennsylvania and Orange, but it's very hard to get from there to the residents' homes if there is no sidewalk. So and we do not have right of way there right now to put the sidewalk in. So as part of finishing the project, we'll look at putting in sidewalk in front of along Oak Valley and maybe along Pennsylvania and along Orange, allow people to park on the side streets and be able to walk to the residence. If they have visitors coming in, or on the weekend, if they have other relatives coming in, they have no place to park. The only possible place to park would be across the street in the church parking lot, which then they have to cross a very busy street to go into. So our recommendation, 2 recommendations, and the other part is looking at the speed there. When we change the configuration of the lanes, we went from 2 lanes to 4-lane street. So what we should do is probably go through and do a traffic speed survey to see what speed limit we should establish, what is a safe speed limit that we can establish. So we'll do that as part of this recommendation to council is to do a speed survey, look at the speed limit, help people. If we can lower the speed limit, post that lowered speed limit, so people can slow down, and as the residents are going in and out of their houses, it's safer. The other thing is to look at putting together a project in that area that would build about a couple of blocks of sidewalks, and we'll come up with the design of it, look at what areas we need easements from the residents, talk to the residents if they're willing to give us the easements, and then come back to the council with the project. And then it would need to be funded and then advertised and gone through the whole process of building the project. So that concludes my staff report. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions from council? Do we have any public comments? No.
Yes.
Question or comment?
Two clarifications. Number one, no accidents since the restriping, correct? I don't want someone to take that out of context.
And that was specifically at the intersection where there's a stop sign, because there, instead of now having one lane, there's two lanes that are stopping. So yes, since the restriping and adding of that lane, there hasn't been any accident at that intersection.
Okay. And then the other sort of clarification or understanding I want to make sure is apparent. Doing the 2 lanes was part of the WCARG agreement because Oak Valley was originally one of those TUMP-approved roads that in the lawsuit was determined not approved or did not qualify for TUMP, specifically because we weren't going 2 lanes the whole way. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So we've now made that one road that was not approved for TUMP, now approved for TUMP, and that's why we did it as part of the WRCOG settlement. We agreed to address some of the projects that we could fix to make them approved by the TUMP.
And as you may recall, that was pointed out by WRCOG that for us to take credit for those projects, we had certain things to finish.
Okay.
This was one of them.
So this was one of the projects we needed to finish then.
That is.
Okay. Thank you.
Do I have a motion?
I move to receive and file, and thank you for putting that report together.
I'll second.
Thank you. Item 10.
Sorry, I'm going to do roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Carol. It's
You
okay.
can tell I need a break. That's who needs a break. I keep asking if everybody else needs one. It's me. Sorry, go ahead, Nicole.
Councilmember Santos?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor Carroll?
Yes. Did I need to read something differently?
Uh-oh, I must have said something.
There you go.
Thanks a lot, Lloyd.
This is a good time.
I just want the Cherry Valley Festival
I know.
to be here a little bit longer.
I'm feeling
Cherry
the pressure of the red shirts.
If one thing that we also were looking for some direction on was the strategies to provide for complete sidewalk interconnections there
All
along
right.
that south
No,
side.
Thank you. Thank you for clarification. Do you want to amend your motion?
I think we can just provide a consensus that I'd like to see alternatives.
It's just direction. So
All right.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see the alternatives about the sidewalks that they talked about.
Definitely.
I agree.
I agree on that. Yeah, to have the sidewalks.
So,
And that'll help facilitate additional parking as you go down
Parking on
towards
the other
Palm,
side,
that they can
yeah.
walk and be safe and on the way
Lower
out. So.
stress, too.
thank you. Do we need to?
That's fine.
All right,
Consensus is
thank you.
fine.
Okay, now for the red shirts. City sponsorship of the Beaumont Cherry Festival.
Well,
Item 10.
Well, and I apologize to Cherry Festival because when we structured the agenda, we thought we would be to you at the top of the meeting. So appreciate you bearing with us. We do have the association bringing forward the 100th anniversary Cherry Festival event, which is scheduled from May 31 through June 30th of 2018. And so they've guaranteed an absolute fun time for everybody who's there. If not, they will give you triple the money back in a cherry pie, I think is what I understand. Is that right, Buzz? Okay. 100th guarantee only, 100th anniversary guarantee. So rush out and get your tickets today. So with this event, and particularly with this being a special anniversary, the association had a conversation with me about really trying to amp this up a little bit more, kind of elevating the artist fees, elevating the acts that would be coming, also doing some pyrotechnics, and having some a neat fireworks display to kind of top everything off. So with that, and with the increase in costs, there's a question on how that would be funded. Because you're really talking about a $99,000 increase total to the event. And so, in looking at that, one of the things I contemplated was that we've got our TOT, our transient occupancy tax, basically the head and bed sales tax revenue stream that comes into the city. We have probably about another 125,000 or so of TOT revenues that'll come above what we had budgeted for this year. So my thought was, since this is really kind of a community marketing kind of event that has an impact on our local vendors and our hotels, it would make sense to look to kind of earmark some of those TOT dollars over. As one of the ongoing efforts or participations that the city has provided over the years, we've provided the park at no cost. In addition to that, we've provided the community services personnel to help set up and break down and clean up and conduct the event. We have also provided security through the police department, which the association has paid for, as they've done those events every year. So Chief had gone through and worked up a cost for police overtime to provide security for the event this year, looking at about $34,000. So my proposal would be to provide $100,000 of the TOT and to also have the city cover the overtime for police to help facilitate and help this project move forward. One of the key issues that I thought about, and in talking with Buzz, it really kind of came pretty clear to me that this event isn't just an event. The event also has provided very valuable resources to the city over the years. The improvements to Stewart Park, the buildings, the structures that are there, in addition to the fencing, the wrought iron fencing that wraps around the park, are all things that were funded with that. Supporting local youth. I think last year there were 2 seniors who were awarded $2,500 scholarships apiece. So this is an organization that isn't just doing an event, it's also providing and giving back within our community. So in my opinion, by supporting the event, we're supporting our community, we're reaching out and doing things. Additionally, Bob Sherwood had approached me a few months back about the city really needing to dial into some of the keynote events that we have for our community. What are the things that our community is known for that are things that help us be Beaumont? And as we have existing residents, we have regional residents that say, hey, Beaumont does these 3 things. And we kind of kicked around the idea of really identifying the Cherry Festival as one where we should be a key anchor for that event. The holiday parade that we do, the lighted parade in the evening, which is amazing. I think we were up to 35, almost 40 floats this last year. And then looking at the 4th of July, which is another major event. So if you really kind of contemplate the fact that when we tried the Smash Mouth concert this summer, we were out of pocket about $55,000. With about $134,000 total, we've got an event there that already is a regional commodity that people know about, that our community is already embracing. And then, we look at how it goes and what happened, and look at what kind of sustained sponsorships that the city really ought to contemplate for this moving forward. I really see it as an opportunity to do that. And coming from communities where we had key anchoring events like this, arts and music and things like that, they really help to define what our community is and can perpetuate that sense of community for our community. So with that, that's my appeal and my recommendation to you, my request. And so if this is something that y'all would like to do, we're working on our mid-year budget adjustment, and we would make the appropriate amendments to the budget as part of what we bring back to you at your February 20th City Council meeting. So, Mayor, Council, turn it back to you.
Comments?
I'll wait to hear the others.
Okay. What?
Yeah.
All right, I'll go first since I've been going last. The good explanation. It is a community event. It identifies and holds the community together. I did ask you some questions for clarification for this meeting, so I did already get some clarification on a few points. In the staff report, you do mention a couple of other community events that you would like to have considered. So in the consideration, last year we didn't do anything for Veterans Day, and I just don't feel that we should go year to year without doing that. I don't feel it's probably an expensive event, but I think it's significant. And so I would like to add Veterans Day to the consideration list that you have here for events, but I would definitely want input from the other council members on that also, because that just happens to be my feeling. I got asked a number of times last year what we were doing for Veterans Day, and we just did not have a good answer. And I just would like for that not to happen again.
May I go next?
So I went first and broke the ice.
That's why I choose to go first, because you stole my thunder. At the Yucaipa Veterans Day event, I was approached by Art Welch, City Councilman for Banning, and he said to me, he said, we need to have something like this in the past, and he approached me again last week, and I would like to, if we have to do a future agenda item, to add the Veterans Day to your list, and then Mr. Welch suggested that we could back and forth. I think it was done years ago. Beaumont hosted one year, Banning hosted the other year. I think we should also invite Calamasa if they want to be part of it. I know they're a big part of the Yucaipa event, so they probably, their schools go to the Yucaipa, but in Yucaipa, the high schools and the middle schools, bands come out and, they make an entire day of it. And it is disappointing that we have to go to Yucaipa for something like this. So Art has said that he's willing to have us reach out to him and get support from the Banning side. But I think it would be important to do something like this in our community. The only other thing, I think you made a good argument for the money, and we're trying to brand and get our PR out there. And I would hope that if we become this significant of a partner, that we get some of the recognition. In other words, a joint sponsored event between the City of Beaumont and Cherry Festival. I think you might have done some of that in the past, but if this is going to become one of our keynote events, and we're going to make that significant of a contribution, I'd like to see that we're included on the.
Well, and I think Buzz mentioned that. I think he was going to sculpt a bust of every council member out of nacho cheese and popcorn.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure.
You can leave mine off. Okay.
Life size. And sprinkles for the mayor.
So I also support that with those couple conditions or suggestions and support for what the mayor suggested.
Comments from council?
Yeah, I have one else. So I just want to add that, yes, I support the veterans idea. We talked about it back when I was on the Memorial Committee about, having something on Veterans Day. So I'm glad everybody's on board with that. So I would definitely support that adding to the list. And the Cherry Festival is such a part of, it's just, it has the name in it, Beaumont Cherry Festival. And I think it's important that we continue the support, so I fully support you. I think it's a great that we should have done it a long time ago. Really get more involved with that. I really think it's time. Just for a numbers person, just a couple of clarifications for budget. So for the 125,000 you said above projections on the TOT, is that kind of like a surplus then? Is that above what we're projecting?
Yes,
okay,
it is.
so we can think of it that way.
And I had pulled that back by about 50%, strategically this year because, with sales tax and didn't know where things were going to be. So just didn't want us to rely on it. But
Exactly.
our receipts are coming in.
Good. And for the 34,000 that said it's already in the budget, is that what it was originally for?
Yeah.
Okay, so technically we're not adding that. That was already place marked there. Perfect.
Yeah, we've got our overtime in the PD includes some overtime for this event as well as for, I guess, the Coachella Music Festival. So the Coachella is about an $80,000 cost, but there's reimbursement that they pay back on that particular event.
And then on the last note, so is it my understanding then that we're not going to be seeing some big price tag in the summer for some summer concert thing? I mean, we can do something small, whatever we decide, but these are the landmark events that we're looking for.
This is it.
Okay, I agree then. Thank you.
No summer concert.
And the only other thing I would like to add is that we do our best effort with communication on the city side with our new efforts on PR and getting the word out and that we've been doing so good at. I think we can use this as an opportunity to do even better this year than we did last year on getting the word out on it. So.
I agree. Just a question, we're still looking good on our mid-year budget report. Don't see any items on throughout the budget. We're
Nothing we can't handle.
Thank you.
Sure.
You've heard that before, right?
Yeah.
I do support on that. I mean, I like to hear that we will have the Veterans Day. I've been looking forward to that, and then the Cherry Festival. That was really a classic. And I heard that the Special on Bob doing well on the summer concert. Probably in the future we'll see that. I mean, I supported that. I always come in there and see it. So so great job. I mean, on the Cherry Festival.
One last comment before I make a motion. The Smash Mouth sign is gone.
I saw that.
Just want to let you know, it's finally gone.
Or just paint over the date.
It was always a sore reminder every time I drive by it. So, and then do you have any idea? Can you tell us who any of your artists are this year?
Not yet.
Okay.
Because we were, getting our budget together.
Got it.
And, I'd like to make a comment real quick.
Me? I'd better be a skunk.
I'd like to talk for about 20 minutes on electricity.
That's long.
I see
We're
the
gonna
red shirts.
electrify the crowd.
The red
Get 'em
shirts are
involved
leaving.
in the 100th Cherry Festival.
Yes.
We're going to have a great year this year. The group's excited to put it on this year. The fireworks, we're going to get out there and really work for getting good entertainment. We're going to have fun, and we really appreciate your support. And last year you supported us, and here's a little plaque to thank you for your support. And it's the Beaumont Cherry Festival, and Beaumont is included in all of advertising and everything else. You go on the website and you look up Beaumont events. Here comes the Cherry Festival. So thank you for anything you can do for us this year, and I'd like to present this plaque to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you want to do anything?
Oh,
Do you want to move forward?
Oh, yes.
there? Okay, thanks.
Thank you, and thank you, guys.
Councilman White. Thank you.
And I would like to say this, two of our committee that are not in the red shirts. One has a blue shirt on there, and then Bob back there.
No. Yay.
They, I'll tell you, our committee works hard all year long to put this on, and we appreciate whatever you can do for us. Thank you very much.
Good job.
Thank you.
Look forward.
So did we make the motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve item 10, approve the sponsorship of the 2018 Beaumont Cherry Festival and direct city staff to amend fiscal year 2017-2018 annual budget as appropriate, and evaluate the results of the 2018 Beaumont Cherry Festival and consider multi-year sponsorship agreement with the Cherry Festival Association.
I'll second that.
Councilmember Santos?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor Carroll?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
very much. Item 11, continuance of the public hearing for the revisions to the approved city's fiscal year 17-18 capital improvement plan to reallocate available funds. I'd like to open the public hearing at, I'm sorry, Amr, are you going to do your report? Thank you. I'll open it afterwards.
Councilmember, I have a quick report on this item. As part of adopting every year's budget, we project moving forward what the revenues will be and what the project's cost will be. And that's how we set up the CIP budget every year. As during the course of the year, when we got for RFP or we got for bidding, the costs either come in higher, lower, and as part of the mid-year, we do that. Every mid-year, we're supposed to adjust that. The other issue is there's sometimes fundings such as gas tax that we anticipate a certain amount of funding to come in, and then during the course of the year we realize that either we have less or more. CDBG is another example. At times we realize we have additional money in CDBG. So this is the time where we can adjust the budget, mid-year budget, to reflect more accurately what has gone on in the last 6 months and what we think will happen in the next 3 or 4 months that are left in the year, the fiscal year. We are working on getting those numbers done. We were not able to finish them on time for today's meeting. That's the reason for asking for continuation of this public hearing to the next meeting. We plan to have the draft CIP adjustments to you for next meeting for revision and comments. With that, I conclude my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any public
There's no
comments?
requests.
All right. So I will,
Need to continue our public hearing. Yeah, please.
since there are no public comments, I will open and close at 8:45 and then.
Just to make a
We don't want
correction.
to close the.
Oh, I'm
hearing.
sorry.
Yeah, I just want to
That's
continue.
right. I can't close. Continue it to the
Thank you.
next city council
Yes, February the
meeting,
20th.
unless you're not ready at that time.
Well, we'll, even if we're not ready, we'll present the same thing if we need to continue. on
Okay,
this,
thank
another
you.
Continuance. I think we'll be ready. We'll be ready.
Okay, item 12.
I'm sorry, we do have to make a motion on that to continue it.
Oh,
So you did the motion. If I could just get a second, I'll do roll call.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Just
It's going to take a while.
That's coming up.
Councilmember Santos?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor Carroll?
Yes.
Thank you.
Item 12. acceptance of the Strategic Communications Plan. We have a staff report.
One of the key objectives that we established moving forward into this year was really to set up a communications strategy and communications program. So Ms. Starr has worked unbelievably hard to pull together really an overarching strategic plan and concept for making sure that we're pointing our program the correct way and that you're comfortable with where we're going. So at this point, I'd like to turn it to Ms. Starr to take us through.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. The City Manager stated I'm here to discuss our strategic communications plan. There we go. So what is a strategic communications plan? It is a policy-driven approach to providing stakeholders with information. So the City of Beaumont Public Information Office, we're dedicated to improving the image of the City of Beaumont and the flow of information to its constituents through a comprehensive and proactive communications and outreach strategy. So why do we need this? With over 46,000 residents and over 170 city employees, clear and consistent communication is essential to improve the city's or the general public's understanding of the city's efforts and develop a sense of confidence within the community. The overall goal of the Strategic Communications Plan is to identify opportunities to share our message, and as Beaumont continues to improve our financial position, renew our image, and develop the public's trust, effective communication will take on an even greater importance. So before we look to where we're headed, we should figure out where we're at. Currently, our website was most recently redone in 2012. You recently hired me, Public Information Officer, to facilitate communications for the city. And we've established a new logo, which is shown here in the bottom right corner. It is a spinoff of our current city seal/logo. So we've been using that on all publications since last spring. We have engagement through our social media, over 5,200 Facebook followers, almost 350 Instagram followers, and over 2,000 Twitter followers. So we do have an active community on our social pages currently. So for our plan objectives, multiple resources were used to develop this comprehensive plan, including staff research, a review of strategic communication plans from other California cities, and information contained in our Economic Development Committee's approved SWOT analysis. So the research has led to these following objectives, which are to define and launch the Beaumont brand, to have community engagement and empowerment, to streamline internal communications, and to, as a play off of the general plan, to elevate Beaumont in general. Key elements of these objectives. A core component of the Strategic Communications Plan is a rebranding initiative. City branding provides a framework for organizing, differentiating, and focusing around a city's competitive and distinctive identity to ensure that its messages and experiences are relevant, compelling, and rewarding as possible. To enhance our digital media presence. Effective communication in today's constantly evolving technological environment is extremely challenging. So in order to effectively meet the city's communication goals in this dynamic environment, it'll be important that the organization remain abreast of new technologies. And finally, we must budget for the expansion of the Public Information Office. Various components of this plan, including but not limiting to the rebranding initiative and enhanced mobile and website applications, will incur costs to the city outside of normal operating costs associated with marketing. So with that, our recommendation is to accept the Strategic Communications Plan and authorize staff to seek proposals for plan objectives. I can answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Do we have any public comments on this? Okay, thank you. Questions?
I do have a quick.
Councilmember White?
I'm not sure where, but I saw somewhere in here that you had a section on specific ways to get our message out. And you had different updates, but I wanted you to include the mayor's update that I started last year.
Okay.
Add that to the program where the mayor writes something for each newsletter.
Okay, yes, sir.
Okay. You don't have enough to do, Ms. Kerr.
That's okay. Any other comments?
Is the 1940s silent movie effect for that, is that part of the communication?
I did add that.
It was good for about the first 45 minutes.
It doesn't look too bad with this picture. It's good.
It does, it fits well.
Do we need the piano playing in the back?
I thought it was SEC, or Southern California Edison sending us a message.
A little bit of a threat there.
Like that. I do have a few comments too.
You did a great job on writing out the plan, and I understand that it's probably fluid because you're just getting started with the launch of it. So, I'm sure you're planning on being somewhat flexible as you need to put resources into different areas. And, as long as it's flexible, I think that it's a very good beginning approach for us. I do.
Thank you.
Can I
Couple of questions.
comment? I do, agree on Councilman, Lloyd in there, to have a annual, report or if possible, a quarterly, the mayor could communicate to the public. And that would be nice to have a, on a yearly basis, a brochure, reflecting our goals and our objectives and the activities. And also, if we could, probably incorporate, if possible, the financial information in there, so they will know that we're getting to the stabilization of the of the city, to communicate to the public, especially the public, especially the citizen of of Beaumont, which is me. I mean, I like to see that, and the activities like the Cherry Festival. That will be incorporated in there, all the activities on that brochure. That would be great.
Yes, I agree. That would be a good addition. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I like the plan. It's very, very well written. I like how on Objective 2 you incorporated the EDC, the Economic Development Committee suggestions on that. So thank you for that. My question has to do with the tracking the expenses. So I noticed that the timeline's coming after we approve. It looks like it'll be coming back in the budget later, and that's where you plan to have some of these ideas for proposals and stuff in there. Because the RFPs are going to go up after we approve, and they'll go up, and then the numbers will come back right around budget time, so that we can include them in the budget. That's the plan.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So you're talking about launching if you were to hire consultants to help do some of this work in the next fiscal year. So it'd be the 18-19 fiscal year.
Okay.
And so you would budget for that.
Okay, and then as far as ongoing tracking, that will just be a part of the process. Okay.
Sir.
Very well. Thank you. Very good.
I would add one thing when you get to the RFP stage. Since this is a new area for you going forward, and this is just my advice to you on the RFP stage when you get there, make sure that you get the person that you need to work with. Make sure that you get somebody senior and somebody who's really had to deal with crisis management. Don't get yourself into a situation where the RFP looks good, but you end up with a junior staff person, because you really need, if you're going to be in this launch process, you need that infusion of a really experienced person. So you don't want, from somebody who's been involved in consulting, you don't want the high-powered person to give you the pizzazz for the presentation and then you not get that level of seniority and experience to work with you, because that will help you to be more successful. So just really make sure you get what you need when you're starting to push your boss on the RFP. So
I told her I thought we could get it done for about 200. It's just a little bit of paperwork, right, Ashley?
Sure.
I move to accept the strategic communications plan and authorize staff to seek proposals for plan objectives.
I'll second.
Councilmember Santos?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor Carroll?
yes. Item 13,
Excuse me, Mayor. Now might be a good time for a break.
Yay. So glad everybody. All right, we'll come back at 9:05. Thank you.
Got it.
Contract award, compressed natural gas fill station design services.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. First, just let me say thank you for your continued support. I appreciate all of the comments earlier.
Thank you.
So tonight, we have a request for a contract award for compressed natural gas fill station design services. In November of 2017, staff issued an RFP, and we posted on the city's procurement website, publicpurchase.com. And we asked for, in the RFP, to evaluate 2 sites for the construction of a CNG fueling station, and with that, to develop plans and specifications for the construction. The 2 sites include 4th Street east of Beaumont Avenue and 5th Street east of California. A pre-submittal meeting was held and 5 firms attended. City received and opened proposals with costs from 3 qualified firms, including Raimundo Engineering, Gladstein, Neandros and Associates, and Alisto Engineering Group. Staff got together, Public Works and Transit Department representatives, and we interviewed those 3 firms. We believed that we needed a face-to-face with them to really gauge who would be the best responsible bidder. So based on the proposals submitted and the interviews held, staff believes that Raimundo Engineering is the lowest, most responsive proposer, and we recommend a contract be awarded to them in the amount not to exceed $126,935. And I want to talk a little bit about fiscal impact. There will be no general fund monies used on this capital project. To date, Transit has secured $1.2 million in reimbursed grant monies for the construction of a CNG fueling facility. Of the 1.2 awarded, $1 million's been allocated through our state transit assistant funding from RCTC, and $200,000 has been allocated from a grant awarded from the Mobile Source Air Pollution Reduction Review Committee, MSRC, which is a local government match grant. That matching grant requires us to match the $200,000, which we can do with the $1 million from RCTC. So that's where we get the 1.2. So the contract award for this portion in the amount not to exceed $126,935 will come from the Transit Capital Project Equipment Fund. We have to advance the money out of transit, and then we do progress payments or claim forms to RCTC, and they reimburse that fund. Additional grant funds will need to be secured in about $600,000, so we don't have all of the money needed for this project, but we plan to ask for more state transit assistant money from RCTC this year, and if needed, next year. So with that, staff recommends City Council award a contract to Raimundo Engineering in the amount not to exceed $126,935, issue a purchase order to Raimundo, and then authorize the mayor to execute the agreement.
So move.
Do we have any public comments? No. Do we have any questions from council?
Second.
Councilmember Santos?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Sorry.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor Carroll?
Yes. Item 14.
Mayor, I'm going to recuse myself. This has to do with the school district, my employer.
Yeah, and it's not a legal conflict, but understand that you're recusing yourself just to avoid any appearance of impropriety.
Thank you. Item 14, go ahead.
Okay. So in the interim, before the station is built, we need to fuel somewhere. And so we actually have been fueling at Beaumont Unified on Cougar Way. We negotiated agreement with Beaumont Unified. They need a security gate at the Cougar Way site. And the reason they need the security gate at the Cougar Way site is because we are the only non-Beaumont Unified fueler allowed. And right now, their staff has to unlock and lock the pumps during a certain time of the day in order to allow us to fuel there. So we talked about installing a gate at that property. We contacted RCTC. We can use our CNG money that I just spoke about on the previous item. And what we'll do in exchange for the roughly $20,000 that it'll take to put in a security gate, we will get reimbursed through a discount on the fuel credits, 25 cents a gallon. And the agreement outlines how that will happen. And if for some reason within the 3-year contract, the city and the school district separate the agreement, terminate the agreement, then the school district would be on the hook to write us a check for the full amount that's left on the grant. So they're in essence a sub-grantee of our grant from RCTC, and RCTC has approved and signed off on that. So again, no impact to the general fund, and we're recommending that the agreement with Beaumont Unified be approved and authorize the mayor to execute the agreement.
Public comment?
None.
All right. Do I have a motion or question? Discussion?
I just appreciate the fact that you're reaching out to the Beaumont Unified School District and working with them to come up with this agreement. Great work. And with that, I'd make a motion to approve the agreement with Beaumont Unified School District for CNG fueling and authorizes the mayor to execute the agreement with Beaumont Unified School District.
I'll second that.
Councilmember Santos?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Carroll?
Yes.
Somebody want to get?
Item 15, Token Transit Mobile Digital Pass Sales Outlet Agreement.
That's a mouthful.
It is. At this time of night, yes. Go ahead.
So the next item we have is a mobile digital pass sales outlet agreement, and the vendor is Token Transit. We provide public transportation over 190,000 passenger trips annually, and fare media is sold on a limited basis. Half of all passengers pay by cash when they board the bus. The process requires each cash vault to be removed from the bus nightly and counted by 2 transit personnel. Our best practice policy when counting money is always have 2 people counting it, so it's verified. This can be labor intensive. Monday mornings, it takes us 3 hours, 4 hours to count, and that's 2 people. Tuesday through Friday, it's a couple hours. In an effort to reduce cash handling, we began exploring other fare media options. Right now, Omnitrans and RTA have already entered into this same outlet agreement with this company. Omnitrans had rolled it out back in August. RTA just approved it at, I think, their December meeting for a very specific group. They didn't roll it out to all of their passengers. They're going to do a demo with La Sierra University first to see how it works out. We, again, negotiated an agreement with Token Transit and the general terms and conditions and fee schedule to use their software. Token Transit does not charge to design their software. In fact, in the staff report, you can already see the software's there. It already has Beaumont's logo. It already has the fare structure. They did that free for the demo. There was no charge. Where they get their money is they charge, every time somebody buys a pass, they take a portion of it, and it's a graduated scale. And on one of the attachments in the agreement, attachment B is their fee schedule. So for every bus pass sold that's more than $2, they are asking for 10% of the gross total proceeds. And for every pass that is under $2, they are asking for 6 cents and then 7% of the total, the gross total proceeds. And what they do is when the passenger buys the pass, that money, that credit card money goes to Token Transit. We do not charge the customer, nor do we get charged the credit card charge, which can be anywhere from 3 to 4%. I think American Express is a little bit more. So they collect the money, and then every month or every week, depending on what we ask, they will send us the raw data of how many passes were sold. We can reconcile that with our trip sheets, and then they send us a check. They do a direct deposit into our bank. The amount of time that is spent counting coin and cash will greatly be reduced by electronic fare media. The other benefit of this is if another company comes in and they want to sell us their software, we're not limited to Token Transit. We have a 30-day termination if we don't like the program or it's not suitable to the passengers. We can terminate it. We're not on the hook. We don't have license fees and things like that. So we did run some numbers. We took December's passenger counts to look at what exactly the cost would be, what would their commission be, and we came up with, we sold a little over $18,000 in passenger fares. That's onboard and fare media. And their fee, based on what we sold, was about a little over $2,000. Not quite 11%, but that's 11% of the 10%. And we calculated a little over $3,000 in staff time counting vaults. With the fare media, that's less money to count, less cash to handle, less fare media sold at the counter for the City Hall staff as well. And so we believe that we can reduce the counting of the cash vaults by about about an hour a day, so 25 hours in a month. That would save us about $1,500. So there's a trade-off. So we are recommending council approve the attached outlet agreement and authorize the mayor to execute the agreement.
A question, Mayor.
We don't have, do we have public comment?
We do not.
Thank you.
So Elizabeth, congratulations, by the way, on your
Thank
appointment. So how does that affect the fare box calculation? Because you've got money coming in, but then you don't really equal what you kept. And does that, I mean, is that affected in any way as far as?
It does. So if a passenger boards the bus and they pay $1.15, if they use the mobile pass, Token Transit gets 14 cents of that. So we would get $1.01. So there is a cost. It's not a charge that we pay a bill. It's a commission that they receive.
So as a part of that percent that we're supposed to have for the fare box, the original price they paid is still what we get credit for, right?
Well, we don't get credit for it. It's
Well,
really
not credit.
cash in hand.
Oh, so it is cash in hand. Oh,
Yes, and we have to meet that. As of mid-year, our fare box right now is 11.39%, and I haven't run January's numbers yet. I'm working on that right now. So there is a trade-off. The benefit to this program is we can terminate it at any time. If we watch the numbers every week and we believe there's a dip in our fare box due to this, we can terminate the relationship. Omnitrans just gave a presentation to their board a couple weeks ago, and they've actually seen a 2% increase in passenger sales due to
convenience.
Due to the convenience. The other thing is the benefit to the youth passengers. 50% of our passenger base is students. Mom and dad can text the pass to the child if they forgot their money or they lost their pass. Mom and dad can go on to the program, pay it, and then send a link to the child's phone, and the child can still get on the bus. So you can actually I can buy a pass for you and send it to you without you having to find cash. And so there's been an incentive to get on the bus because they're not worried about having exact change.
Very good. All right, thank you.
And if I remember from the RTA presentation, they expected that that would be a positive influence on ridership because of the exact change factor.
Right.
The fact that the buses don't make change.
And there's over 20 transit operators in Southern California using this program. Omnitrans and RTA, Sunline's looking at it. We're surrounded by people using token transit. Our passengers are going to go where it's easiest. They're not, you know, once they get out of the region, they're going to go where it's easiest.
I have a quick question. If by doing this you lower expenses, as you're talking about, does that affect the dollar amount that makes up the 10% of the fare box? Do expenses play into that?
Yes, absolutely. As long as our expenses are under 90%, we meet fare box.
Okay, so even though we may lose some on the incoming in, as long as we can show a savings in
Absolutely.
in expenses.
Yeah, yeah. And that staff that's counting that money right now could be best served doing something else.
And reduce error, potential
Yes.
for error. And this doesn't have any effect on, you're going to get, your audits are now going to go to RTA, correct?
RCTC.
RCTC,
Yes.
rather, sorry. And so this won't affect any of the audit process because the vendor will have to cooperate with them also.
Absolutely. And the reporting is pretty significant. They will drill down as far as we want them to. They're actually working with Omnitrans for an April rollout that gives more detail on that. So we actually could come up with reports from them that we can't right now.
Good.
Mayor, I'd like to move to approve the attached mobile digital pass sales outlet agreement and authorize the mayor to execute the agreement on behalf of the city, subject to city attorney review with no substantive changes.
I'll second.
Councilmember Santos?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor Carroll?
Yes. Item 17, acceptance of proposals for special counsel services.
So at the end of last year, calendar year, we had talked to council about going out to RFP and trying to go ahead and authorize or pre-approve several different legal firms that had some additional specializations that would really complement the things that we needed. And if you remember, we got into some need for ORIC, for example, to come in and look at some bankruptcy issues pursuant to a development-related problem that had cropped up. So we were authorized to do that. So in December, we had a deadline for RFP proposals. We actually had submitted that back out another week because we wanted to try to catch a little bit wider net. So with that, we got 9 felt really good firms responding to the RFPs, providing specialization in a broad range of services that were there. So we had some staff review those proposals. We had John Pinkney help review those proposals and help us kind of work through and look at the firms that were there, the services they were offering, and kind of seeing if they would work for us. With that, we narrowed it down to the 4 firms that we have listed. Burke, Williamson, and Sorensen LLP. And those are really strong land use, eminent domain type attorneys, good with public works cases. Bid had hourly rates ranging from $140 to $290 an hour. Liebert, Cassidy, and Whitmore have a very strong reputation and renown for employment law. They also have a series of really well-respected employee law training sessions that is an option for us to look at. Their bid has them at $250 to $350 an hour. Lewis Brisbois, Bisgard and Smith LLP. Again, tort, eminent domain, employment, labor, police defense. And in addition to that, some experience working with them on some of our other past cases. So they're $100 to $400 an hour. And then Manning and Cass, and we have been using them, right now to address some of our existing police challenges that are out there. We had to reach out for some specialization with regard to some issues around that. So again, $125 to $225 an hour was what was proposed there. So based on the bids, based on a review of the submissions we had, narrowed that down to 4. Staff recommendation is to accept the proposals for special counsel services for the following 4 firms: Burke, Williamson, and Sorensen, Liebert, Cassidy, Whitmore, Lewis, Brisbois, Bisgard, and Smith, and Manning and Cass. And then authorize the attorney to be able to negotiate contracts for those 4 firms to be utilized on an as-needed basis. And then authorize the city manager to be able to execute those contracts. So it's a recommendation.
Thank you. No public comments? All right.
No, ma'am.
Questions from council? No?
I'm good.
This is
Do I have,
on an as-needed basis.
pardon me?
This is just work on an as-needed basis. So, for example, we currently are working with Lewis Brisbois, where we're defending the city in a case, and the former chief of police was also sued in that case, and there's a potential conflict there, so we can't represent both. So Lewis Brisbois is representing the former chief of police in that case. There might be situations where we have to bring in another firm for a conflict or something like that, but it would be as needed. And that way, when we have a situation that comes up, we don't have to go through an RFP process. Like, we had the situation that Todd mentioned with work. We won't have to stop what we're doing. We'll have some, law firms lined up that'll be able to help.
And these will fall under the city manager's authority to go ahead and seek their services without having to come back to council, as long as it's within the range of our ordinances, right?
And we would keep you in the loop as we
Sure.
had to go and retain, additional outside legal services that were there. So this just, basically, we've gone through an RFP, we've been able to select these, and now we have a stable of attorneys that we can turn to. And we would turn to those in conjunction with Mr. Pinckney and his recommendations on where we might need to reach out to additional legal specialization, or in the event that there was the unique situation with the conflict, we've got somebody we can turn to.
And there's no cost for retention or anything like that. It's just
They're just there. They're just there if you need them. And the whole idea behind this was having it, go through an RFP process and vet the potential firms that you might use so that that's done. And so when you have a situation that comes up where for example, there was the Manning Cass is handling a matter for the city, and they specialize in a particular area. And rather than going through the whole RFP process, you've got law firms if you need them. So they're just approved if you need them.
And what we would do is we would execute a letter agreement with them, to do a specific thing for us.
I really like this improved process. I like the fact that we went out to RFP for the areas of specialization. And I like that we've put this out in council so that if any of our citizens see these names on the warrants, that they can know that it's a well-chosen process that's gotten there before that check, and that it's meant to address an area of specialty that we just can't cover in one city attorney. And so I think it's an excellent process.
I know you told me baseball's not big in Texas, but this is like a bullpen. Just to help you understand.
Bulls are big. This is like bulls in a bullpen.
I'll move to accept the proposals for special counsel services for the following firms that we've already named. Authorize the city attorney to negotiate contracts with each of the 4 firms to be utilized on an as-needed basis, and authorize the city manager to sign those contracts negotiated by the city attorney.
I'll second.
Councilmember Santos?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor Carroll?
Yes. Item 18, the Transit Ad Hoc 2x2 Committee. This is the staff reports from the city clerk's office. Did you want to give the report?
I think that was out of default.
Then I will go ahead and get it started. I talked with Councilmember Welch from the city of Banning. I've talked with our transit director, and I've talked with RTA about getting better communication and working in a more cohesive way in the past with transit, because transit's like air. It crosses over the line occasionally. The needs change, but basically we're all here to serve the public. That's the only reason that we provide this transportation. So we talked informally. I talked with Councilmember Welch about starting up the 2x2 concept that we talked about before. And they seem to be really on board with it. No, it's had some bumps before. So I asked for this item to come to council so that I could find if there was interest among other council members in meeting with 2 members of the city of Banning, whether it's probably going to be the mayor and 1 council member, but that's just through informal conversation that's happened. So with that, did we have a flood of people applying to be on the ad hoc 2x2 committee?
I did send an email out, and there was a couple of interests.
Well, no one has mentioned anything directly to me. I definitely would like to be on that committee, so I would need 1 other council member. I guess I would say, is anyone interested in being on the committee?
Who indicated interest?
Yourself and Councilmember Lara.
Laura? Councilmember Lara?
I'm comfortable with Mr. Lara doing that if you are. But I do want to reiterate that this 2x2 should be, Banning does not want to do it in public. I talked to Councilwoman Franklin, and she said, no, we're not doing this in public.
Was that a recent conversation?
About 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just because of my experience trying to do this last year, and they began the conversation with, we don't trust you. I think I am a little bit skeptical about trusting them and believe that in a closed session, they just want to beat up on us. And throughout the process of last year, they made commitments to come back for meetings. They arranged meetings where I was supposed to show up on my own, and they showed up with their staff. They had agreed at the end of last year to put an item on their agenda that we would as well, that we would work through a needs assessment, joint, first individually and then joint. And they said they would do that, and then when I went back to them again, they said, oh yeah, we'll do that, and they were supposed to have done it this last meeting. So I'm just saying that I'm not comfortable with a 2x2 that is not a publicly noticed Brown committee meeting. And I think that needs to, if I'm alone in that's okay, then you can decide not to. But if there's consensus with the council that is a condition, then that needs to be discussed with them now and up front, and see if they do have pushback, because Councilwoman Franklin said it would not be a public meeting.
Well, at this point, I would rather put it back to them again, get our two people, and put it back to them again, and see if they have become more flexible, see if, depending on who they end up appointing, if that makes it have any more flexibility, and then see what happens beyond that. I don't want it to be a gripe session. If we're not getting together to actually put the problems on the table and figuring out solutions, then it won't end up going anywhere anyways. So, does our city attorney have any?
Yeah, I was going to ask
concerns?
about that. So what's our parameters?
So the way, I don't have the resolution in front of me, the original resolution, but the way it was prepared and teed up was, my recollection was creating sort of a committee comprised of 2 council members from Beaumont and 2 from Banning. And under the Brown Act, when you have a subcommittee of the council that is comprised solely of a minority of the council, it's not subject to the Brown Act. But when you have 2 committee members from Beaumont and 2 from another agency, then that committee is not comprised solely of a minority of this council. It's a minority of this council and a minority of their council. And so my opinion is that it should comply with the Brown Act. And that's because of the way it was teed up in the resolution. I remember looking at this the last time this came up. So, you know, and the spirit of the Brown Act is to conduct the people's business in open, where public input can be received. And so, you know, what is the downside to talking about an important issue like this with a neighboring agency in an open forum? So my recommendation would be to do it through, treat it as a Brown Act body.
Could you have a, perhaps titles like chairman of the committee and have the chairman meet first informally without public noticing it, and then
What we ended up doing last year was the 2 mayors met.
Right, and that's what I was getting
And
at.
that was the process throughout the whole year, and we made no progress, really. There really was nothing ever accomplished. And it was, you know, the mayor would say, well, I got to talk to staff, and then he'd walk out of the meeting like, yeah, that's a good idea, we'll do that. And then when I, you know, don't hear from him for several weeks and I follow up, his comment is, well, staff didn't like that idea. And so, because there was no public accountability to us moving forward, it's my opinion that that they could continue not to move forward. And I believe, and I've heard from both of the 2 council members that we've mentioned, both directly and indirectly, that they still feel that we are the ones that are holding this up. And I went to them several times, said, look, we're willing to do whatever it takes to get this moving forward. Whatever it takes, but we need some commitment from you to show us that you're interested. And I didn't get anything other than, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, and then nothing ever happened. And maybe it's good that I'm not on this committee moving forward, but I think in order for this committee to succeed, there needs to be some public accountability on both sides. And it needs to be clear. I think it'll be harder for them to drag this out if it's clear to the public that we are making every effort to cooperate and that they are not. And I think the public accountability will hopefully motivate them to come to the table and work out some of our issues.
Well, I don't want to be in the position where, legitimately or not, we sound like the group that's holding it up. So with that in mind, I'd like to go through with the appointment. I'd like to restart, and with the city attorney's recommendation that we restart with a public meeting and go through every step we can to set it up. And then if they are not cooperative and they don't want it that way and they don't meet us with any flexibility, then we've done it again. I don't know what else to do.
Right.
Other
No,
than
I agree.
for us to look like we don't care.
I agree, but I want to make a recommendation that the way we started last time makes sense. You sit down with Mayor Moore and say, okay, here's where we'll meet. Here's how the meeting will go. I mean, you work out the arrangements with
Okay.
him, and then everything is set in motion, and maybe this time they'll have a different take on it.
I can do that, but I would like to have the two people ready, so that we look like we're fully loaded.
Sure.
Maybe a bad choice, but, so with that, I would like to appoint Councilmember Laura to be the other ad hoc committee member. Thank you. Item 19, I have to leave.
Oh, you have to.
You're up, Mr. Martinez. Grab that.
Oh, okay, I think I'll do it left-handed.
You don't have to, I was kidding.
I'm just kidding. So for item 19, do we have any public speakers?
We do not.
I move to approve the reimbursement request for Mayor Nancy Carroll.
Councilmember Santos.
Yes.
Councilmember White.
Yes.
Councilmember
Yes.
Lara. Mayor Pro Tem Martinez.
Yes.
I'll
So,
recuse myself.
do I get to use, oh, you're gonna go now? Grab Nancy on the way.
Item 20, approval of the reimbursement request to Councilmember Lloyd White in the amount of $50.14.
I'll make a motion to approve the reimbursement request in the amount of $50.14.
Second.
Councilmember Santos.
Yes.
Councilmember Lara.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez.
Yes.
Mayor Carroll. Mayor Carroll.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can't find my paperwork. Item 21, legislative updates and discussion.
If no one else, I have something here.
Oh.
Okay. There's two legal issues that are coming up. They were both discussed at the RCTC annual workshop, and action was taken by the RCT Executive Board, RCTC Executive Board.
Thank you.
They surround SB 1, Senate Bill 1, which was the gas tax increase. And it was to direct staff for RCTC on what direction to move forward on two items. The first item, and I'll do this chronologically, is in June, there is an amendment to the state constitution that'll be on the ballot. And the amendment to the state constitution says that any monies that are directed towards transportation through a resolution or a vote by the people is locked in for transportation. So in other words, the state cannot change it. However, we know our state can. And then the other item was to direct staff to coordinate efforts and resources to fight the repeal by the voters of the state of SB 1. And I was against that. I felt that the voters had not had a chance to weigh in on it to begin with. And there was a lot of pressure that money was now necessary to build our transportation projects. We're getting a bunch in the city, projects from SB 1. And So the final vote was, there was 3 of us who voted. Actually, what I originally asked is to separate those 2 items, to let us vote on both other 2 items, because I would have voted yes on the amendment, and I would have said that I think it's not appropriate for the RCTC to be weighing in on this issue. And they had laid out a pretty strong argument, RCTC had, that without this money, we would be in dire transportation situation, even though a year ago, before anyone ever thought SB1 was coming, we had plenty of plans on how we were going to build our infrastructure. So I tell you all of this because it will come up, and I think, you know, it's difficult to make the decision. Do we decide that tax money that will help the city shouldn't come to the city? So anyways, I think these are the kinds of issues that if I had been more on top of it, and I apologize, I would have brought it to you guys first, and we could have made a decision as a council as to how I would vote on that issue. As it turns out, it didn't really matter because my vote was not a deciding factor in the issue, and I'm the only one who has to take the political heat for voting against bringing money to the city. So those are these are the kinds of discussions that we need to have ahead of time. So I think if we put a little more pressure, and I'll do what I can on the board that I sit on, that they give us more heads up so that we have this information before our council meeting, and if you guys would do the same on the boards that you represent, so that we can at this point bring up these issues and we can discuss them, and then you can all take political heat with me. And, I don't know where you all would stand on this one, but at this point, it's a done deal with RCTC. So, so anyways, that's my legislative update and my part of the discussion.
So I have a question for Mr. Pinckney on this. So, Mr. Pinckney, then, if this were to have come before he voted, would there be a need of an action item for us to take a position as the city of Beaumont, or is it just direction that we give to our representative on something that one of our boards is voting on?
Ideally, if we know about it in advance, and the agenda is posted usually on Friday, is that right, Todd? Usually on Friday?
Yeah.
Yeah, we would list the subject matter, a brief description of the subject matter on the agenda, so that if somebody in the community were interested in weighing in on that issue, they'd have an opportunity to come here and voice an opinion. So that would be the ideal situation.
Now, as far as the authority as a representative of Beaumont, does he need us to vote and say,
No.
let's say we disagreed?
No, he doesn't.
Okay.
But I think that what I've heard you all say before is that you want to have these discussions so that it's the will of the group versus one individual speaking. But the ideal situation would be if we can get this information in advance and put it, just one brief line describing what the subject matter is that you're going to be giving direction on. I think that would be the ideal situation. But is it legally mandated that you give a member of a county committee or a multi-agency committee direction on how to vote? No, it's not. And I doubt that the other agencies do.
No, I don't. And it's my opinion that I would sit here, we would discuss this, and you folks would give me your opinion, and I'd weigh that when I made my decision. My decision is not based on the fact that 3 of you want to go one way and someone else wants to go to a different way. I mean, that's one reason I'm on that board, is because I was given the authorization to represent us. So I think for us to actually vote and tie the hands of a committee member to not have the flexibility to go in the direction they want, it would have made me more comfortable to know whether or not you guys would have supported the direction I voted. Doesn't mean I might not still vote, against your wishes, and then you had the ability, I believe, to change who represents who on these boards.
And I was going to mention that, because if it were something that was consistently agreed upon, then I guess the mayor or whoever would have authority to remove the committee member if it chooses fit, I guess. I don't know.
On major legislative issues, for example, in the League of California Cities, takes a position on a legislative issue, that will typically that will go to a council, and they will vote and give direction to whoever's going to be the voting member at a league conference on how to vote on that piece of legislation. But you know, you usually get that well enough in advance to be able to have that discussion. So.
And that may come up with League of Cities, because they've been discussing the same issue as to whether or not they, I mean, they had already decided as a group. They have I forget what they call it, a steering committee that had decided that they were going to take the same position RCTC did on those two issues.
Well, this gets more complicated because I am the California League of Cities representative on the Revenue and Taxation Committee. So the League of Cities will take that committee and push or discuss their position. And in fact, it may be in conflict with what this council wants it to go. So I'm not sure, since it's new. I've never met with the committee yet, as of yet, but the committee meets typically in Sacramento, and so I have to be clear on what it is that I should do when I go. Do I have the voice of the council, or am I the representative of the league and their collective decision?
And I don't know if that's different, because the league is not necessarily a committee such as RCTC, RTA, and things like that. It's more of a lobbying organization. But I personally think that you make the decision based on what you think is best for the city of Beaumont. I just think that we should all have the opportunity to persuade you, if time permits, that in the direction of our position. But it's still, I still think it's your decision when you have to make that vote on how to go, except for the exception that John brought up.
I would think that all of the arguments in the position of this city, I would be stating that voice in that committee so that they heard what it is that this city wanted to say about that. But I may get totally overridden by the other members of that committee.
Sure.
In which case, then they have to have a unified voice.
Well, I'm not going out, it's a done deal with RCTC. I'm not going to go out and as a member of the RCTC board, bring it up and keep fighting it. But I am, as an individual, going to be telling people where I stand on that.
And whatever position may conflict with what I personally feel too, with the League of Cities. But I think it's important that they hear all the passion of what the city feels.
True, and I think that's where the discussion will be useful. Okay. But again, I think it's up to our representative to make the final decision on these.
We'll see how the discussions come in the future.
Any other legislative comment? Council reports. Councilmember White.
I was going to start with that, the RCTC, and I did that. And I attended the Beaumont Cherry Valley Water District Engineering workshop, which was in regards to their 10-year CIP. And I come back to report to you that there's it seems like a new mood in the Beaumont Cherry Valley Water District. A good portion of the presentation by Mr. Jaggers was involving the inevitable availability of recycled water. And so a couple of things happened. Number one, he brought up the fact that they were aligning their 10-year CIP with the projects on our CIP that will impact them. So they didn't look at our whole CIP, but they put together a list of items that were on ours that they will need to be planning for financially. And then he kept making comments like we already heard before, that they're moving forward on getting permits. And the comment came up a couple times that along the lines of, well, if they get recycled water from the city of Beaumont, because recycled water will be cheaper than state water, and right now they need to use state water to blend in the basin, that if they had recycled water that they could use that for, then they would be, their ratepayers, which is all of us, would be paying less for the cost of water. So he was, the whole mood of that presentation was that, you know, we're working with the city's moving forward. We now really believe that the city is going to be able to take this direction. So it was a very positive meeting for most of us in the audience. There was 3 of us in the audience, but I believe it was, well, maybe it wasn't that positive, right? Yeah, 1 out of 3 is okay. But I think there was some frustration in the other members of the audience that the water district and the city are on the same path now, and that we're working together. So, and that was brought up also by a couple commissioner members, that they really appreciated the fact that the city was now a partner with them on moving forward. So it was a really good meeting, and that's all I had.
Thank you. Councilmember Santo? I'm going bottom up on the list.
Bottom up, okay.
Just as a heads up to the rest of you.
Yeah, on my report is I was on the League of California Cities on Sacramento, and learn a lot. I mean, being a council person, and met a lot of good people in there coming from other cities, and give me really a good education on that too, the attitudes and everything, how to handle things in there. And I really highly recommend that us, to attend. I mean, to attend that seminar or conference in there. That's 3 nights in there, and also meeting a new city manager in there, meeting even the city clerks in there. They're new. I mean, especially the mayors. I met on the Santa Barbara mayor in there, even San Francisco, even the Sausalito. Met the guys in San Jacinto and Moreno Valley, and compare notes with them and talk to them, and hopefully it's not against the Brown Act. I mean, we discuss things and learn from them. And I really, again, repeat myself. I mean, if we could have a chance that we could send 1 or 2 council people in there, new staff, or our city manager. I met a lot of city managers in there. They're super people. I mean, nice to meet with them. And other than that, attended the groundbreaking in Morongo, and there are new restaurants in there. Met I'll mention this. I mean, Pacquiao's unboxing. That's Tim Bradley, and he's putting a restaurant in there. The Poke restaurant, House of Poke. I mean, I don't know if you know that kind of dish. I mean, it's more Hawaiian, and it's healthy. So, and then also, of course, the Potrero thing. I really enjoy that, and learned a lot from you guys, especially you guys. Thanks a lot.
Councilmember Martinez. Mayor Pro Tem. Sorry.
So I'll just make it brief. So I too attended quite a few little ceremonies these past few weeks. Attended the Wolverine ribbon cutting ceremony, the Chamber of Commerce Installation of Officers event, Veterans Expo, and the Potrero Interchange groundbreaking ceremony. And a lot of good things happening in the city. It's very exciting and very refreshing. And the RCA, we talked about land acquisition and the permits that the city, and the city permits to them, the amount of $26,000. And we discussed the species of the month, which is the mountain yellow-legged frog. And I see Todd taking notes over there, so let's see how that turns out. Thank you.
Is that species of the month coming from you or from that?
No, they have a biologist that presents once a month that tells why it's endangered.
I thought you
or
were
something
picking
like
this
that.
each
No,
time.
that's right from her. And she sends me the PowerPoints to use in my classroom, so.
Okay.
Right,
Yes.
that is nice. Councilmember Laura?
Just wanted to thank Ashley and staff for the hard work they did for the Potrero groundbreaking. It was something I never thought I'd live to see. But the staff did an excellent job, and I appreciate their efforts. I have.
That was one of my items, was the Wolverine groundbreaking was really good, and then it got even better at the Potrero. So staff is ramping it up, every single one of these groundbreakings. I mean, next one I expect to have ABC and NBC here. You know, I thought you guys did a great job. You really did. It went off flawlessly. It was so well done. I heard many comments afterwards on how well it was done. The Vets Expo, again, staff did a terrific job. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, everyone who made that happen. I've heard, since I'm on the Vets Committee, there's going to be a wrap-up meeting. One of the things they're going to discuss is whether they're outgrowing the venue. And I'm going to try to keep it here and see if we can just tweak a little of the organization, because I actually think that creates great buzz to have it be as busy as it was. The turnout gets better every year. It was just very well done and great support from the staff. The chamber dinner was very good. I had breakfast, the mayor's breakfast. I spoke to Supervisor Ashley about, we all update each other on what's going on. And Supervisor Ashley, it was just before the Potrero ribbon cutting, and we talked about the homeless issue and the fact that it's shouldn't really be a city issue, because that problem can cross over the city line and then it's the next city's problem. So it's really more of a regional problem. And Supervisor Ashley talked about how much work that the county had done on research and provisions that they've put in place for the homeless. And I just encouraged him to look at it more regionally and look at us as having regional needs for information on what they're doing about the homeless. And he said that he would look into that. And so I intend to follow up with him and make sure that whatever he can share with us on what's been working or what they have been finding out helps us. And not just helps Beaumont, but helps Banning and Cali Mesa too, because it becomes all of our issue. And that's pretty much it. So, City Treasurer?
I do have a report from our meeting yesterday, the Finance and Audit Committee meeting. I apologize for not having a typed report. I was under some time constraints today. We welcome 2 new members, Wendy Fuller and Anna Alvera. And we also voted to make Richard Beneke the vice chair. We had various financial reports from Milana, a 6-month different comparative reports from last year and with the budget. So we went through those pretty thoroughly. Milana also gave a presentation on the CalPERS program, and she explained it in a lot more detail, so it was very informative as to how it's impacting the state and the deficit. She said that she started the audit for 2017, and our future agenda is an update on the audit, a state controller's office update, and then we did have some public comment on some general ledger documentation that has been requested. And so Milana said she would give us a report on that at the next meeting, some of the problems with giving out some of the general ledgers. And that was it.
Thank you. Does council have anything that they want to bring back to the Finance and Audit Committee through the treasurer? We just set our agenda items for the next meeting, but at any time, if there's anything that council would like to have the Finance and Audit Committee, please funnel it through Sharon so that she knows to put it forth on the agenda. City clerk report?
Nothing to report.
Thank you. City manager report? Okay.
Okay, briefly, I sent you all a confidential memo providing you with an update on litigation to which the city is a party. And then in the packet this evening at tab 22 is a brief cryptic summary of the status of litigation to which the city is a party. The 909 houses matter has been resolved, and I delivered a check to the city today as part of that settlement. And then AC equipment is at the pleading stage. The Walker case at the pleading stage. Urban Logic is still pre-trial and will be for a while. Duh versus City of Beaumont is pre-trial stage. And then the HUP cases are listed there, the status of that, and I gave you detail on the report that I provided to you. And then the Peters case is still at the pleading stage. And the City of Beaumont versus Aklufi is stayed pending completion of the criminal case. So that's it.
Thank you. Future agenda items?
City.
Oh, are you, I thought you gave up your slot.
Oh, he just yielded.
All right, sorry, my mistake. Go ahead. Okay. Are we going to talk about the Super Bowl?
Oh, you took his thunder.
Haircut, perhaps.
That's it. No more vittles for the mayor. We did receive, kind of in abstention, I guess you could say, a certificate of congressional recognition from Congressman Raul Ruiz. I can't believe he's a physician because that signature looks pretty clean. So I was going to talk to him too if he could put Raul Ruiz and put a 36 there, you know, like that.
Very started.
But it says certificate of congressional recognition is presented to City of Beaumont in honor of your groundbreaking event for the Potrero Interchange. On behalf of California's 36th Congressional District, congratulations on taking the first step towards the accomplishment of such an important access point within the community. Presented the first day of February 2018, Beaumont, California. So congratulations to council. It's a big news there. That's a perfect segue to discuss something that Bob is working on. We discussed the restroom opening issues out there. We've been working on some strategies to do some initial work to try to keep the restrooms open during kind of our prime park usage hours. So he's flexed out staff as a temporary measure to try to make sure the facilities are open. And we're still pursuing technology, looking at other options. So we're still, just want to let you know that we hadn't forgotten about it. We're still working on that. So we will have a formal strategy to present to you. The things they don't tell you about in graduate school. They don't tell you about.
Technological advanced restrooms. I'm looking forward to that.
Exactly. So you know, my son loves amphibians. It's some of the most favorite things he has on earth. And it was kind of funny because we were just talking about a news show he saw. They were talking about a new team or a team that's moving to Las Vegas. They were called the Raiders. They're changing their name to the Las Vegas Mountain Yellow-Legged Frogs, based on what happens to them whenever they see the Broncos take the field. So,
Really?
yeah, yeah.
See, that's a long road to hoe for that.
Well, still can't work a nude in there. I've been trying for a couple months to figure out the nude. So, anyway, that's all I got for you.
Thank you. Adjourn to closed session at,
Future agenda items?
pardon me?
Future agenda items.
Oh, nobody responded.
It's because he cut it. You
All right.
switched over to
Future
him.
agenda items, again.
I mentioned it earlier, but I think we should establish a Veterans Day committee. I asked,
committee?
yeah, I believe so, to work with the two cities. I asked a couple members of the Veterans Expo Committee. I don't know if is that the proper title, or is it Veterans?
Yes.
And they believe that this should be a separate, that they shouldn't take this on, that this should be a separate issue, so.
Well, this is not Expo, though. This is for Veterans Day.
Correct, correct, but I that's why
They
I.
just have such established interest in
Oh.
veterans.
Yeah, so
Well,
that's why I
yeah,
assumed
that's
that,
all.
I think
Yeah.
some of those members will want to be on this, but it should be a committee made up of at least Beaumont and Banning representation, I think, so we can do it the right way. So I'd just like to put that on a future agenda item.
Okay. I think that's appropriate.
Yep, I'd like to discuss that. And Mayor, I just wanted to see, Mr. Parton, the update on the city's road pavement prioritization, is that coming up soon, hopefully? Some people have asking me about that, so I thought I'd throw it out there.
Anything else?
No.
All right, we're good. Okay, thank you. I will adjourn to closed session, the Beaumont City Council at 10:15.